Hey, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to what is now the second episode of my new podcast, Me and All My Friends. Today, I am absolutely delighted to have my good friend Joe Moralez on the show. I'm going to be interviewing Joe about his career successes, all the ups and downs that he's experienced throughout the course of his career. Joe is somebody that I met, I guess, way back in 2017. Joe, am I right in thinking? Somewhere around that kind of time?
Yeah, maybe 2016, 17. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
2016. It was something along those lines. But Joe has had an incredible amount of success. He's incredibly humble about the success that he's had over the years. He played keys for a Christian contemporary artist by the name of Brandon Heath. He also co-wrote a song for Brandon called Love Will Be Enough for Us, which was also cut by another huge artist by the name of Dave Barnes.
Barnes.
Dave Barnes. He's had songs that he's written which have been picked up by Chinese boy bands, which is a pretty random thing. A song that he wrote called Feels Like Summer, which got cut by a band in China called the TF Boys. He's also had a couple of EPs recorded. His Imagination and Interstellar Hearts EP were produced by a gentleman by the name of Stephen Solomon. You might not know the name Stephen Solomon, but Stephen Solomon actually co-wrote the song Say You Won't Let Go, the #1 smash hit in the United Kingdom for James Arthur. On some of those EPs, he also had a co-writer, which is an incredibly famous writer by the name of David Hodges, formerly one of the founding members of a huge successful band in the US called Evanescence. Dave was involved in some of the writing on those EPs. Most recently, he had a song that he worked on co-writing and producing for an artist called Dalton Day, another phenomenal artist and another friend of ours, which was used in a Nature Valley commercial, a national Nature Valley commercial across the US. If you want to find out any more about Joe, you can head over onto his website, which is elftreepublishing.com. I'll provide the link in the description of the video. Head over, check out some of his music. He is an incredible songwriter, an incredible artist. I am delighted to have him here. Please welcome Mr. Joe Moralez.
Oh wait, me.
Oh,
Dude,
yeah.
cheers, man. That was so freaking awesome. Dude, thank you.
My
Cheers.
pleasure, Joe. It is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Man, it's an honor to be here on St. Patty's Day.
St. Paddy's Day, I should let everyone know that although this is maybe going to go out a few days later than St. Patrick's Day, we are actually filming this on St. Patrick's Day. So we have got our alcohol at the ready in celebration because we're still in lockdown. We've still got all of these crazy COVID restrictions. So I'm currently like an hour outside of Belfast in the north of Ireland. Joe is currently in his studio in LA, which is pretty cool. But thanks to the wonderful technology that is Zoom that we've all become very used to over the past 12 months, we're able to sit and have this conversation, and it's really exciting to have him here.
Yeah, dude. I'm so psyched to be here. I also, yeah, it's, you mentioned we met back in 2017, which feels like forever ago. But yeah, man, it's so crazy to see kind of where things flow in life. Because I met you were traveling and touring around. But then I even got to come out and visit you in 2019, right before the pandemic. So
right
I got
before
to
the pandemic hit.
Yeah, I got to squeeze my barefoot toes into the sand of Ireland before I was completely landlocked to the States.
Yeah, before the world went crazy, Joe.
It's gone. It's something. I don't know what.
It's insane. The past 12 months have just been a really, really crazy time. I know that you have kind of been in a similar situation to what I have been in. When the whole thing kind of kicked off, I was actually supposed to be on tour for a couple of weeks at the end of March last year. The tour got pulled literally days before we were due to fly out. The band contacted me that I was touring with. They were an Irish folk band from Belfast. And they contacted me and they said, look, we know you were going to go to Nashville for a while around the touring dates. And so if you want to go over to Nashville, like go and enjoy yourself, And so I ended up actually flying to Nashville the day before the United States closed its borders to everyone other than US citizens, which was insane. And I know for the past 12 months, like ever since I've got back, Ireland has pretty much been in lockdown. Like everything's been closed. Bars and restaurants opened up a little bit for brief periods of time, but then ended up getting shut down again as the cases kind of soared. You've been kind of in a similar situation because I know LA, out of everywhere in the States, LA and New York have been two of the most affected by the whole thing. You've been under pretty strict lockdown. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, they started, I guess, this time last year. They basically locked us down. I mean, I feel like it was the 14th or the 18th or something of March.
Yeah.
So we've hit a year at this point, and yeah, I mean, I feel like most of the pretty hardcore Democratic states really kind of took the hit the most extreme because of, I think, honestly, personally, I think political reasons. But California, yeah, I mean, it's just been kind of a depressing place to be because you can't go to anything. No shows, no movie theaters, can't go into indoor dining. It's been over a year now since then. So it's just been kind of interesting to kind of, I mean, I know it's worse in some other countries too. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's, the Gestapo's not here beating me over the head. I think for the most part, even though they've had mask mandates and things like that in the city or statewide, not a lot of people are really enforcing it, aside from, like, I guess if you go into like an establishment, like a restaurant, or you go to pick something up in a gas station or whatever, they're enforcing it pretty hard as far as like restaurants or businesses. And then also maybe just kind of the Karens on the street, that are like, you need to wear a mask, oh, who do you think you are? Like, not wearing a mask, like, because I don't wear a mask when I'm walking around on the outside. Like, I just don't do it. And I know that it's becoming like a thing of contention, whether you're like, oh, you're an anti-masker. And it's like, it's becoming so bizarre for me, because I'm kind of one of those guys that has been paying attention to a little bit of the tyrannical ways government has been acting over, from reading about it in history and then kind of observing it in real time. This pandemic has really exposed a lot of kind of the authoritarian, dictatory kind of behaviors that government have, especially in the States, now that, governors are being given a lot of power, or at least given the leeway to do something because we're in a national emergency, so they're just pulling out all the stops and really crushing small businesses and making the richest companies in the world even richer. So it's kind of this really sad state of things, I guess. Yeah, California has been a little tough because everything that's awesome about it is still there. You can still go to the beach, still go to the mountains. I've gone away to Big Bear a couple of times. I've gone to Joshua Tree, at least 3 times since the pandemic. So getting out has been crucial. It was brutal when they shut the parks down, and I hope they don't do that again. So
yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I knew when I asked you to do this interview that it could go in any number of tangents, and we've had plenty of deep discussions about this, like, conspiratorial side of things and what kind of lies behind a lot of the actions that the government takes in different situations. And I had a feeling that, especially because we're sitting here drinking on St. Patrick's Day, that some of that stuff was going to come out. I'm very surprised that it came out within the first 5 minutes of the podcast, to be perfectly honest.
Hey man, I'm a very candid person when it comes to what I see happening in the world. That's all I can do. And, for more than 10 years, I've been paying attention to this stuff. And, and I understand a lot of people don't know about the conspiracies that are happening in the world because we've all been taught to veer away from anytime you hear a conspiracy theory or somebody who's a conspiracy theorist. They're just a crazy person talking mumbo jumbo. And it's like, well, we're forgetting that every single thing that happens in the world, I don't care if you're a teacher teaching an art class, or you're a professor teaching history, or you're a doctor who's, studying whatever it is. It takes people conspiring to put together the activities that people consume. And so we're all consumers. And so I didn't really understand until really I kind of got into the music business, and I started seeing that there is a behind the scenes to the world we live in. When I watched movies, when you learn Santa Claus isn't real, when you learn Easter Bunny isn't real, these are all revelations as people we have to go through to say, oh, okay, so even though it's kind of like Santa Claus and stuff, it's, and if you're what, under 10 years old, maybe you shouldn't be listening to this part of the podcast. Hopefully maybe not at all, but Um, but
I'm 32 years old and I still believe in Santa Claus. Joe,
dude, sorry, I'm crushing your fucking Saint Nick
I don't know
dreams.
what you're talking about, Santa Claus exactly, or how Santa Claus is supposed to be a conspiracy. I don't want to hear it, quite honestly, because does great work.
Cutting me off
Good
right
guy.
there. That's it.
He's a
All
good
right.
guy. I'm the host of the podcast. I've got to control
All
this thing. I've got to direct it, and I can't have you bad mouthing Santa Claus. That's not cool. Especially in the first 10 minutes of the podcast. That's just not on. I enjoy the tangents. I very much enjoy the tangents. I am aware, however, that the fact that I know you reasonably well, we've obviously had a number of pretty deep conversations. I know your story reasonably well. I am aware that probably for some people watching this,
Yeah,
like
true.
I'm gonna say this in the most loving way. You are a rocket, and you just go off. Like once somebody lights that fuse underneath you, I don't even feel like I lit the fuse, and you're off already. Which I say in the most loving way, Joe.
If I'm given the freedom of that, then I go. But if
Yeah.
not, I also understand. I've done interviews and stuff where I don't talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I'm asked point blank about my thoughts on something, I like to be very honest. I'm not going to sit here and act like people are of a fifth grade mind. I don't believe that's fair. Yeah. And I do think that the world in which we live, all of us, I mean, we're all dealing with very serious situation right now. And it's not just about a virus, and that's the serious situation, is the virus. It's not that, it's something else that's come with the virus, and that is what's always come with the virus, and that's government overreach and things like that, that we're all having to assess from country to country. And you and I can come in and we can have our common ground with going, okay, this is what Dublin, or this is what is happening in Belfast, and this is what's happening in LA, but what is really happening? Why is this happening this way? Where did this virus come from? Why is no one explaining to us anything that's making any sense? When it comes to the numbers the CDC is putting out there, so I just kind of, and again, people can roll their eyes to these things, which I totally understand, but that's only because people are propagandized, and I hate saying it that bluntly, but I think at this point, if you're not open to like thinking of other ideas or alternative ways of thinking, because I do have an alternative way to think, and if people want to shut it off, I'm kind of over that. I don't really care, because it's for me, it is my reality. My reality is trying to understand what is reality, which means even if somebody out there is afraid to think about something, well, there's a lot of people who aren't afraid to think and talk about and pontificate and theorize, and there's nothing wrong with theorizing things. I don't know why we've gotten into this place where it's so dangerous to think about conspiracies or think about alternative narratives. I don't understand at what point in history, at least as an American, that's what this country I thought was about, was just fuck you. I can think what I want, I can say what I want, make money how I want. And unfortunately, I think that is kind of true, but it's kind of gone, the pendulum has swung so far. I think the pockets of people in the world that have flocked here have created a way to do that, and they're cutting everyone else out now. And now they're trying to figure out a way to dominate the planet. It's really disturbing. And it's the tech companies and stuff like that I'm referring to, along with banking, because the tech companies were never funded without the banking. So it's that kind of a hierarchy I like to talk about, because it is real. It's like you and I could be at a university having this discussion. How could someone deny this? How could you deny there isn't a hierarchy, or you know what I mean? So anyway, but I know we were here to talk about music.
It's all good. I love where the conversation's going. I think, and I'm just conscious for those people out there who don't know you, and I think for people in general, and I'm sure that you can understand this and relate to this, when people are exposed to these ideas and they maybe don't have any kind of idea of what we're talking about, obviously me and you understand better than maybe most people do. I think it's fair enough to kind of say that. And I think that the trouble with something like this is when people hear these ideas of conspiracies, whether they're conspiracies or not, oftentimes we get caught up in the fact that people kind of vomit their ideas out.
Yeah.
And in the vomiting of those ideas out, we kind of lose sight of their personal humanity, and we just look at the ideas as being super far-fetched and super out there compared to what our reality is. And so I kind of want to be able to bring it back and to kind of walk you through, I guess, your journey in life, because I know you've had a pretty colorful journey like I have. And so I want to kind of give people an insight into how you've ended up landing in this place where you have these beliefs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
this will be interesting.
I mean, taking it right back, obviously I know a lot about your story, and I'm interested to let other people hear a little bit about that story. First and foremost, you obviously have a bunch of thoughts swirling around in your head that you're keen to get out. But first and foremost, I know you as a musician, as a songwriter, as a music producer.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that just like me, music is so ingrained in your life that it ends up forming such a huge part of your life that it's impossible to kind of extract that from anything else or any other ideas that you might have. And you've already alluded to the fact that being in the music industry, you've started to see these like cogs turning within it that kind of worry you a little bit and make you wonder, you know, you see all these things in the movies. And somebody said to me recently about how I think I had made a video for my Down the Rabbit Hole series, and I was talking about how people get taken advantage of within the recording industry. And somebody actually messaged me after I made one of those videos and said, it kind of blew my mind to hear that people actually do get taken advantage of in the industry, because I think that that's just something that you see in movies, but it's kind of exaggerated by Hollywood, you know, but that is the reality, you know? So I'm curious to take it back for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as an artist, as a songwriter, as a musician, and a music producer, how did it all start? Like, whatever gave you the interest to pursue a career in such a mental industry as the recording industry is?
Well, I mean, it would, for me, it started back in, I mean, ever since I was really young, I was in love with sitting at the piano, and I was blessed enough to have a piano in my house. So that was like kind of my first interest was just going up and sitting at the piano and just kind of hearing the notes that I could put together. And even though I didn't know how to write any music or anything, I kind of knew from listening to the radio and my mom would always sing the harmonies in the car. And so I learned how to break up the main lead melody versus a harmony. So I started understanding how melodies worked and how they worked in songs, which just kind of led me into taking lessons. I was terrified of the recitals, and so my mom let me quit piano lessons because I was so mortified having to sit in a room full of people and play these songs I actually didn't really even like playing. Ding 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 ding. You know, it's just like
I never even went to piano lessons, so I have no idea what you're talking
oh
about.
my god, dude.
My grandmother really wanted me to go, but I refused to go. I just outright refused. I had no interest. She was dead set that she wanted me to learn piano, but I just couldn't care less.
Dude, having to go and do the recital was Mount Everest, because you'd go and have to do basically like 3 times a week. I would be in lessons and I would have to practice and show up to, prove that I was, doing my homework and practicing. But then you'd have the recital, which means it's like, oh man, you're working up to this recital and then there's going to be people watching you. And so it's your first taste of like, having to be and perform and not fuck it up, and I hated that pressure. Yeah, but my mom let me quit because it was really getting to me. But yeah, it wasn't really until in high school I joined a band. Like some buddies of mine, they were in a band together called Fork 7, and they all grew up together. But when I was like 12, I moved to a small town. I moved from San Antonio, this big city, to a very small country town called Bernie out in the hill country in Texas. And basically went from this very inner city, like Hispanic kind of culture to very white, very rich, and very religious town. And so it was kind of, the misfits versus all the Christians, right? It was like people that were involved in the church and all the different churches that existed, and then everybody else that was just like a hippie or an artist or something. And I kind of got like hooked under the wing of some friends that were going to the Baptist church. And so I kind of ended up going and playing percussion in the band, and joining a indie rock band called Spaceman Spiff. We ended up putting out a couple records, and we actually got really good. We started selling out shows around Austin and San Antonio. And that was kind of our dream, was to be in this band. We were inspired by like Fountains of Wayne and Ween and the Get Up Kids and Weezer, the Rentals, fucking like Tears for Fears. These were kind of the things that made us want to just be this rock outfit that like we're kind of from this new era of whatever it was in the early 2000s. But in college, our bass player ended up suddenly passing away, which kind of set us on a whole course where eventually we all broke up. And I always knew I was going to keep doing music. In the back of my head, I always just had this deep passion for, I wanted to tour and play arenas. My dream was to do it with this band, but I just knew shit was changing. And so in college, I just started playing for all these worship guys. I just started getting hired on to play keys for all these different worship dudes, which eventually landed me a gig with Brandon Heath. And I was essentially, I ended up dropping out of college before that. And I was working around, I was working with an audio video company. So I was going around the country setting up like these big conventions of like Badass Line Array. We did like one of the Star Wars conventions. And so I've always kind of been learning my whole life, like paying dues of like just seeing different parts of the industry. Cause deep down, it's like, I've always wanted to perform and like be on the stage. And for some reason I got this crazy taste of working behind the scenes and coming up from, being in this rock band to all of a sudden I'm a side player for these worship guys and playing these, some of these events were pretty wild. And it's like, oh my God, I knew I needed to get out of that. I needed to evolve and keep climbing that ladder. And that opportunity came with Brandon Heath, this badass artist he was a Christian artist from Nashville. He actually was born and raised in Nashville, and a good buddy of mine.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah, right.
In my experience of Nashville, there's not too many people that are Nashville natives there.
Dude, it's so rare. It is rare. And, but somehow it's so funny. He met my buddy, Jeff Giddens. I guess Jeff had interned at his publishing company or record label, one of the two. But I got to know Jeff through mutual friends out in Dallas. And so he actually recommended me to play this big festival called Celebrate Freedom, where there's like 20,000 people, huge festival. And this guy, Brandon, was needing to put together a band, but he needed one from Texas, because at the time he was living in Houston. He took on a job down in Houston where he was like, I think he was working like one weekend a month at this church, at this mega church. And then he was off touring the rest of the time. And so I met him while he was touring. But then I also got hired on to go down to Houston and play at the church whenever he did that. And so I just kind of developed this relationship and, from that angle of being a keyboardist, and eventually saved up enough money and, saved up like 20 grand and made my first record. Did it, it took a couple of years to save up again and till I could do that again. And then I blew it all on, my record called The Way It Goes, because I knew I needed to like elevate and get top of the line shit from the players to the songwriting. I got one of my good buddies, Jacob Schroet, to produce the project for me, which he's literally only produced a handful of projects, but that little like 8-month block of time that I was lucky enough to have with him, he ended up having twins, like all this shit. It was before he had kids, like right in this last little window, which was pretty crazy that he, because he was mainly touring as a drummer. He did like.
Am I right in thinking that I met Jacob once with you in Nashville? We went out for drinks one night, and he was the drummer for Chris Tomlin, who's one of the one of the biggest Christian contemporary artists anywhere in the world. Like not only in the United States, but pretty much everywhere.
He's played for everybody in that world. He's played for all the biggest artists. I mean. I think he's filled in for like Casting Crowns. He's filled in for Stephen Curtis Chapman. He's done, I believe, Matt Redman. I think he's done. I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't know fully. You could probably look his name up.
He's pretty good. He's pretty good, is what you're saying.
He's a phenomenal drummer. But it's what made this record we did together so special for me was he's also a phenomenal composer, and he understands music from a different perspective than I do. And so I was able to kind of partner with him on this project, and it afforded me the ability, once it was done, I ended up getting a licensing deal that gave me my first taste of like, oh, I can make money or make a living where I can just make records and I don't have to just be out on tour all the time, be at the whim and, of an artist that's calling the shots. I could call the shots. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of, that was enticing to me, and it was enticing enough to quit and move. I spent a couple years in Dallas detoxing and going, my best friend, John, kind of helped me get my body back in shape. I was a little out of health and did a detox and got into like a crazy workout regimen. I still did a couple more tours with Brandon, but it eventually got me out here to LA, where I've been for the last 7 years. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in there, Joe, that I would love to touch upon. So many things that stem from that I'm really curious about. One of the things I'm most curious about, quite honestly, is the fact that you said you came out of, well, not that you came out of college, but while you were in college, you kind of got connected with these different worship bands. Yes. You started obviously playing with Brandon Heath, who ended up going on to be a pretty big Christian contemporary artist in the US.
Yeah, I was with him right after he released his first record, and I was with him all the way up through Blue Mountain, which was, I think, his fourth or fifth record.
And four or five records in any kind of genre is a pretty big feat when you're signed to a major record label.
Well, dude, especially because in the industry, like one of the notorious things that I had dealt with playing for all these worship guys is, and I hate saying it, but kind of getting screwed over, whether it was with pay or, getting paid less than somebody else because that person happened to have a kid. All of a sudden I was valued less. It's like little things like that were like, I wouldn't do it that way. I would basically pay all of my guys, obviously, like, I just wanted to be valued. I didn't like that I could be fired like that because there was some other keyboardist out there that the person happened to know. And then all of a sudden it's like, but that's just the name of the game. And to me, that was just, I just had to learn the hard way, like going through a lot of experiences where, I was the guy and then all of a sudden I wasn't the guy. So it was like, I think just knowing the volatility of just getting tossed around and constantly having to be on the hunt for a new gig, really kind of jaded me a little bit when I was in my early 20s. But Brandon brought me in, and literally that dude, he knew from the beginning kind of he knows how it works. And I told him, I was very straight with him. I was like, I'm your guy, I'd love to be here and I will be at every gig. And I just straight up told him I love playing for him because he was genuinely one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, and one of the most genuine, giving, and sticks to his word. I mean, he hired me on and never looked back. Like I went to any gig that he was getting paid enough to bring me out, he would bring me out. And so I was kind of his right-hand man for years. I mean, from 2007 to up until 2017.
Touring with these Christian contemporary artists, you're playing keys for Brandon Heath at the time, who's a signed artist. I'm assuming that you're pretty well integrated at like the highest levels of Christian contemporary music in the US at the time. I'm curious to know, was faith and religion or God a factor in your life? Was it something that was important to you at that time and made it easy to kind of integrate into that whole scene? Or what was your experience of that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of came in, because I when I was like 14, I was essentially pressured into accepting Christ. A bunch of kids at the church, like a cult, literally surrounded me one day. And we're like, "Hey, you should accept Christ." So I did. And I was like, "All right, whatever. I'll go through your little seance." No, but it was. I know it was in good intention. It was. I think it's kind of weird. Like a lot of kids in small towns, when they're raised fundamental Christian, they want to go save all the people who are lost, right? And for me, I was one of those lost people, even though as an adult, I'm 38 now, and I still feel at times like I'm lost in the universe, because when you're young, you sit there and go, okay, well, I'm going to put my faith in this religion, and this is every bit of truth that there is. So anything outside of that, it's of the devil, or it's of, blah, blah, blah. And so I ended up stumbling through that whole world of Christianity, like playing at, the church and all this stuff, getting into the worship stuff, finally playing for Brandon, kind of really taking on the heavy, career of it. I've always just been more, I think I was always just observing it all. Like, cause even at the time when I accepted Christ in high school, I was just more observing the reality, almost from a bird's eye view. I felt like I went a little bit out of body when that moment happened, because it was so foreign to me. And it was so bizarre that this was people's mission. And I was the one in the middle of their circle. And it's like, that's weird. Like, I always thought reality was my oyster. I didn't realize I am now on someone else's buffet. It's like, I am the person they have to, I don't know. It was just a very interesting thing. So I kind of always came at it, like, not really getting the whole concept. But I've always been very in tune with my own consciousness, as far as like, I do seek a deep spiritual experience, with God. And I do believe that there is a God. I do believe there is something bigger than this whole thing, unless it's a simulation or something. Then at that point, it's like, doesn't matter what I believe. It's just a simulation. But like, I've always been very in tune with that, but very skeptical my whole life of everything. I don't trust anybody. It takes a lot of experience with people to really gain trust with them, just because I've, shit from when I was younger. And like, I'm realizing this more and more as I've gotten older, just a lot of shit from childhood, how it really does go with you your whole life. And I've had to learn how to unpack that. And all the while I ended up like trying to like run away from, all of my inner demons, to here I am touring with all these Christian artists who are supposed to be like these gods and like the harbingers of truth and all these things. And it's like, I started realizing these are just people, and they're all literally just there to do a job. And yes, I know, like for instance, like for Brandon, his heart was truly in, the community. Like he's always been involved in that. And I think that's kind of the difference, is like between an artist and somebody who's truly in tune with their artistry, even if I don't necessarily believe in their whatever dogma they choose to believe in. Like for instance, I don't necessarily believe Jesus is the way to salvation. I mean, I guess it could be salvation in a sense of like, you can either like do evil shit and it's going to tear you apart, because deep down we're all like 5-year-old kids who, built layers and layers and layers through experiences. And you can either do horrible things your whole life and you're just going to turn into a piece of shit and no one's going to like you, and eventually you're going to have to find only pieces of shit who are pieces of shit together. Or you want to do good things in the world and make the world a better place. And yeah, I just kind of feel like that's the whole thing, is like, you only have 2 pathways in this life. And I started realizing how thin that veil was for so many people that were putting on a persona that, they're this good person, but behind the curtain, they're just like everybody else. They're taking shits. They're fucking sleeping around. Some of them are gay and they're not gay in public. And it's just like, it's so retarded. It's like, sorry, I can't say that word. I know it's a PC word, but truly it's like, it's such a weird miswiring of who we're supposed to be. I feel like we were supposed to be these honest people, which is why I get in trouble now when I'm honest and talk about conspiracies and stuff. It's like, I'm just talking about stuff I've learned about, like I've studied, it's opened my mind to things. I'm not saying it's truth. I'm not saying, for me that everyone else should do this. I'm just saying, we're all we're all on this pirate ship together, and not everyone is scrubbing the decks. Some people, you know, are fucking fixing, you know, broken staircases. Some people are, you know, preparing the meals for us. You know, everybody plays a part in this reality we're living in. And I just want to know in mine that I'm constantly trying to understand, you know, what is real and what's bullshit. And that's kind of what woke me up a little bit after a while in the industry, was like, you know, selfishly, I'm wrestling my ego of like, I want to be the artist. I love making my own music. How badass would it be to go play an arena? But this time it's people singing my songs that I wrote. How fucking mind blowing. Because I know the way my hair stood up, hearing, uh, hearing Brandon's like #1 hits coming out. Like when we'd play those songs, the second I would hit that fucking piano chord and you hear an arena of people just go crazy, because it's on the radio, and it's like, that was mind blowing to me. And it's like this weird, I don't know if it's a good thing, to be honest. I don't know if people should feel that kind of level of
Adoration and
I don't know. Yeah, I'm still wrestling with that thought, but I know for certain I've never been able to shake it. And I've never been able to shake the thought of being able to perform and have 60,000 people adoring songs that I've written, because those songs have now become a part of their experience, the way they've chosen to interpret them. Because I love the way a song that somebody else writes, I can interpret it for myself. It means something to me that they may not have intended. And I know that's the power of music. And
yeah,
I just
it's
wanted
so
to do it not in Christian music, because it's so it's boxed in my opinion.
yeah. I've always found the whole Christian contemporary thing very strange. It's been something, having grown up like kind of ingrained in the church and like leading worship and stuff myself as a teenager. I always found it such an interesting thing when I started to see behind the curtain, as you describe it, inside the industry. I remember that guy here in Ireland got signed to a record deal. This guy in Ireland got signed to a record deal a number of years ago by, I think it was Curb Records at the time in Nashville,
Yeah, they were
or
big.
Curb Word, and he got signed to this record deal. And I remember hearing, I can't remember whether it was directly from him or whether it was through the grapevine or whatever, but I do remember hearing that when he got signed to the contract, they were investing $1.8 million in him, or something along those lines. It was like a million to $2 million that they were investing in him as an artist, because they obviously saw huge potential in him. They
He's got
obviously saw huge potential in him to make money for the record company. But to me, whenever I heard that, I just thought, isn't it so strange how Christianity preaches this message about how it's not, like Jesus said, it's not about wealth. Jesus said it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than the camel to enter the eye of a needle, or whatever way it was that he worded it. He was very much against the idea of wealth and money and material possessions. And yet there's this huge part of the industry, and Christian contemporary music is massive in the United States. There is a huge amount of money that's generated from it. And I understand that in order to make money, you need to invest money in a product in order to make it grow to that kind of level and make back the money. But at the same time, when you think there are people starving around the world, like, that's reality. People don't have enough to eat. People struggle to feed their families. And is it not the Christian mission to go out and not only minister to the world and preach the good word and the good news to the world, but also to be able to help other people? And it just seems so contradictory to me in so many ways that for one single artist, a Christian record company is investing almost $2 million in just trying to break that artist and get them onto Christian radio in the US, get them onto tours, get them onto all of that stuff to make them popular, to generate more money for the record label. Now, that's not to say that the record label isn't then going and investing that in good things. You can't make that judgment. I don't have enough information behind the scenes to know that, but it just does seem a little perverted and a little skewed to me from the outside looking in, that they have to invest that level of money. And if they're investing 2 million in that one artist, they've got to be investing 100 million across their roster of artists.
Well, it makes you realize, you know, I think for me, like the biggest takeaway of that is, first off, like, when a label, if you're signed to a label and they're, okay, we're going to spend a $1.8 million on you, you as an artist, you've got to pay that back. So a label is just a bank, you know? And so, but that bank wants to make its money. So they want to have a return. So whatever they're willing to like leverage out, that they probably feel good about making their money back. But that's the whole thing, is the industry is completely pay to play. And a massive portion of that money would be going to marketing and basically just paying radios for radio spins and making sure that the right people at the right places were probably sent packages of money or packages of gifts. And it's just a game. I mean, that's the thing is, you know, everything breaks down to a game, you know, and that's
but the interesting thing for me, and the interesting consideration in that is that they're investing this $2 million into things. Like I said, obviously there's a lot of people that are struggling around the world. There's a lot of people living in poverty, not even necessarily starving, but just people that are struggling to get by. And the idea that those companies, just like any other record company, as you say, it is like a pay to play system. Any record company really does have to invest $2 million if they sign a major artist to try and break them to a huge audience. But yet there is something about the fact that it's a Christian company and the question of ethics and morals that comes into play, in my opinion, of how ethically right is that.
Well, it's not. I mean, you're right. You're right. Like when I mean, the thing is they're choosing to play. They're choosing to stand upon a set of moral teachings, right? Like, or I guess handpicking them like a buffet. Like people are just, that's how people live life anyway in general, because people are selfish and people are flawed. But that's what the record labels at the highest levels, they're there to make money. They were there from the beginning. That's why they're a subsidiary of a major record label that's probably under a secular record label. It's like Word Record is what are they under? Like Sony?
Curb, I think they are.
But Curb is under something.
Yeah, Curb's probably a subsidiary of Sony or Warner or one of those other big companies.
Yeah, this goes all the way back to like Follow the Yellow Brick Road stuff, where it's like you think about the record labels and you go, man, they should be doing this, or this is so fucked up that, you know, because really, if you think about it, just the record labels alone, they could make a massive campaign and say, we as a record label body, we are ending world hunger globally. They have the money where they could do that, but they won't. And so that opens the question for me, why? Why won't they do that? If they can, why don't they? So what are the real issues? And do people actually really, truly care if there's poverty and all these things? You do, I do. I wouldn't feel good about going to sleep at night having money that Elon Musk does to be able to end all poverty in Los Angeles alone, but he doesn't. Why is that? And again, at the same time, I also understand that there's this fine line, because we are in a capitalistic world where, well, it's not technically my responsibility as a person to have to go and take care of other people who have their own journeys that they're choosing to write for themselves. And just so many of them, so many people choose to write such poor level standards for themselves. I mean, and it's unfortunate because a lot of that comes from childhood trauma. And you know, I guess we're having to constantly ask ourselves, like, when is it my responsibility to fix the problem? Is it only when I have $1 billion? Or should I just be doing stuff at all times? Or do I even have to? And I don't know. I mean, I feel compelled to say, yes, I think it's all of our problem, knowing that there's something wrong, which is the very basis of why I even talk the way I do, is because if we don't start asking these questions with each other, no matter how crazy I sound, there's something going on. Well, all of us know human trafficking, poverty, drug trafficking, corrupt markets. I mean, how many things do we have to be shown? A corrupt Vatican with all the fucking kids that were being molested and all these priests being moved around and all the cover-ups. And I mean, how many times do we have to be shown as human beings that, yeah, we are flawed? Oh man, maybe we should have more scrutiny about all of these institutions that are telling us what to do. all of them. I don't give a fuck if somebody says they're a Christian. Look into them harder, because if they are truly that, then all of their behaviors and all of their actions and all of the things that they stand behind should reflect that value. And if they don't, it's something else. And that's what we're dealing with. And that's why I'm so just honest about all this shit, because I do think it's serious.
In your experience within, because I mean, you worked, as I say, in the Christian contemporary market of music within the US. As the keyboard player for Brandon Heath, you were playing venues sometimes for maybe 20,000 people.
Yeah,
you were playing arenas. You were playing big shows, big festivals. You were playing all of the, probably with many of the major artists within Christian contemporary music within the US.
Times with Toby Mac, Third Day, Mercy Me, Francesca Battistelli, Leland. We did stuff with Phil Wickham.
All of the big guys.
Curtis Chapman. I mean, all of them. Yeah. We played 700 Club. We played all the little, you know.
I'm interested to know, like, in your experience within that Christian contemporary music scene, were there any experiences that you had that you kind of found a little ethically questionable or morally questionable? Because essentially these people within Christian contemporary music, not only in the United States, but around the world, are kind of idolized in a way, for want of a better term. I mean, they're playing on these huge stages to 20, 50, 100,000 people at a time sometimes. And I'm just curious to know, like, behind the scenes, is all as well as it is kind of portrayed to be when these people stand up on stage and they're singing praises to God and worship to God. And it's not to say that at the end of the day, people are human. Christianity isn't about perfection necessarily, but I'm just curious to know, in any of your experiences, were you really kind of turned off the whole thing by some of the behavior that you kind of saw?
I think not really, because I've always known, like, I think the only person that really ever stood out to me in that world, which I'm not going to say any names, but he was a very high level record label executive. He was just a total asshole. And I had dinner with him twice at a table with everybody, like all the A&R people from, you know, all this stuff. And there was just this sleaziness where I was like, man, these aren't people that I would hang out with. Literally, this is not a world I would hang out with, because it's so, everyone's trying to appease each other and look up to each other. Everyone has this hierarchy in the corporate world. There's a hierarchy. And so I hated sitting at tables, seeing that played out, where, you know, literally there was, okay, so for example, like this one, like all of the people at the table were cool as hell individually. Like, truly, like I said earlier, like, I met really great people in this industry. It was just everyone's playing a part, and there's just this game that's being played. And I don't know. I'm the type of person that couldn't survive in that game. Like, I got vetted by Word Records. A&R was calling me after I put my first record out, and they were kind of calling me to gauge my interest in doing Christian music and all this shit. And I basically was like, you know, I told them, long story short, that I just didn't want to pigeonhole my music in one category and then be beholden to, you know, because I know I'm wild, and I know I think crazy shit, and I know I have a potty mouth, and I hate the word potty mouth, but like, I know that I cuss and stuff like that. And I'm a very kind of free thinking person to a degree. And so I've just tried to keep myself out of trouble as much as possible. And I got lucky enough to get out of the worship stuff, where I was actually having to deal with people as much. Like we would play camps, and we were like approached by campers all the time, and having to, like, you know, kids that wanted to be keyboardists, and you'd be like, well, you know, how did you get to where you are? It's like, where am I? Playing at a camp. Like, I want to get out of here. But like, but no, I really, at the time, I was young enough to, you know, I was trying to encourage
Yeah.
Kids that were interested like that. Like I wouldn't be an asshole like that. I mean, now I'm like, I could never
I
go
think
back.
you would. I could see you being an asshole like that.
Get out of here, kid. I'm smoking my joint. No, but I was still trying to get out of that spot. When I was playing for these worship guys, I was like always looking for the next thing. So I think it was once I kind of realized no matter how high you climb in any industry, the worst for me is being in an industry where everyone's having to portray a specific, keeping up with the Joneses kind of a look. Yep. Versus people in the mainstream world that don't give a fuck. You can be who you want. You can say what the hell you want. And no one can hold anything over you because you're this Christian artist. Oh, who doesn't love a headline where a Christian artist, comes out or has an affair and it turns out they were gay or, some bullshit. It's like, you just set yourself up for some really tough, I would say industry abuse as an artist. If you're a true artist in your soul, you don't need to be in a genre. You don't need to be in the Christian industry. You can be in the mainstream. I know like even Jars of Clay for a while, they had their first big record was on mainstream radio, mainstream pop. And I didn't even know of Jars of Clay until later on. And we got to tour with them, which was badass. They played through their whole like first big record. And I don't know, like people like them, I feel like for the most part, everyone's just trying to do their best. Everyone is just trying to know, everyone wants truth, but I think a lot of people are scared to look for it. I am not afraid to look for it, which is why I've been able to go down the rabbit holes I have and have the discussions that I do and talk the way I do. It may be so harsh and drastic to someone, but believe me, like for certain friends of mine that we do talk about this stuff, this is not a big deal. Like we talk about everything openly. We share memes. We are lighthearted about the world we live in. We know poverty exists. We know human trafficking exists, but we also know that we live in a fucking upside down world where, we're being told to, go put chemicals in our bodies because of something that is literally not going to, you have more of a chance of dying in a car wreck. And it's like, why are we doing this? Like, why now? Like there's always been flus and stuff like this. And why is it so urgent now? And it's such a ridiculous push that now to me, it's just like, okay, well, I live in a world where there are people trying to take freedoms away. Like when I was in my early 20s, we saw after 9/11 what happened. And that's the first time I started thinking about life going, man, things are a little fucking weird. It took me several years. And even then it wasn't until like 07, 08 when I started looking into like documentaries on conspiracies and stuff like that. And that's when I had the luxury of touring, getting off the stage, going to the bus, making a little drink. And yes, we drank on tour and all that.
You drank in a Christian band?
Yeah, we had our own tour bus. We could do whatever we want.
Next thing you're gonna be telling me you were smoking the Mary Jane or
get whores in and out all night. No, it was honestly very tame. We did have drinks though. Brandon is actually a really good cocktail maker. He would make like high end like cocktails. Like you would go to like a speakeasy for these kinds of drinks. But
as long as you weren't smoking any of that marijuana, Joe. That's the main thing. As long as you were staying clear of the marijuana.
No one knew when I was. For a couple of those years of touring, I was definitely, for the most part, I've always been kind of dabbling with marijuana, but it wasn't really like, I never did it on stage or anything until probably the last couple of years. No one really knew that.
You're just sitting with one of those giant like Snoop Dogg spliffs sitting behind your piano, and you just got the huge big cone of a spliff behind your piano. People are like, what is that megaphone that he's singing backing vocals through?
Like Brandon's like, man, Joe used to be like, I don't know, he just used to be kind of like not this crazy. What the fuck's going on?
And that's when he lost his job.
That's when he stopped caring. I'm on like.
All right. So you were talking earlier about how you were living. Am I right in thinking at the time you were living or kind of based in Nashville when you were doing all of the Christian contemporary stuff and touring with Brandon and all of that?
Yeah. So at the top, he was living in Houston, And so I would drive from Dallas. I was living in Dallas at the time. I would drive there to Houston about once a week. And then the rest of the time I was flying to wherever the gigs were. And eventually he ended up relocating back to Nashville. And that's when he proposed, hey, would you want to move to Nashville? My label really wants me to have guys from Nashville that, you know, for money's sake, for flying people out, organized.
Yeah.
We want everybody kind of centralized.
And so then you ended up making the shift eventually from Nashville across to LA. You started kind of becoming more involved in the kind of pop mainstream music kind of world. And whenever that happened, you then started to make some of those connections that I was talking about at the very start of the interview, where you ended up getting connected with Stephen Solomon, who produced a couple of your EPs. You ended up working with David Hodges, who was one of the founding members of Evanescence.
Yeah, well, Steve, I met in like 2004 or 3 or something like that. But he also played in that worship leader circle. So I was playing. Oh, wow. Yeah, so we were kind of always around the same gigs, and he was like the first guy at our level that really like, because at the church of the worship guys that were playing, it was the Heights in Dallas, but Joe Simpson, which is Jessica and Ashley Simpson's dad, he was the youth pastor. And so when Jessica blew up, he ended up becoming her manager. They ended up leaving, going to Hollywood, and, you know, the rest for them is history, right? Mm-hmm. But essentially, like, there was always this connection through that church of like people and just people in that community, where Steve eventually got hired on to play for Ashley Simpson. And then he played for, and these are Dallas people. And then also Ryan Cabrera, which, you know, Ryan Cabrera had the spiky hair in the early 2000s. He was like one of these pop artists. Yeah. But he ended up playing for him and then kind of ended up going off and just doing a bunch of stuff with all these different artists in the industry. Like I think he did stuff for the guy from Tonic, Emerson Hart. Oh, yeah, dude. And worked with him a lot. And then that's how he met, I think, David. And when he came out to LA, David had a beautiful house in the hills and built out the whole basement into 2 studio spaces, one for David and then one for Steve, or whoever was, you know, kind of really working and assisting and kind of doing the B role kind of stuff.
And by David, you're referring to David Hodges, who, as I mentioned at the start of the interview, was a founding member of the band Evanescence. He ended up going on to write, I think, was it Breakaway for Kelly Clarkson? He had some massive hits with some of the...
So many huge songs. It's insane. I can't even...
He's worked with Daughtry and Carrie Underwood. He's written hits for everybody and anybody. He's probably one of the biggest songwriters in the US. I think it's fair to say.
If you want a good interview with him, you can look up a show called And the Writer Is.
That's a great interview.
But it's the host is Ross Golan, but he's a great host, but he's also a songwriter. But it's for people who are interested in songwriting, and it's kind of the success stories of a lot of successful songwriters. So he interviews all these people. But David has an episode, and it's worth listening to. So I think he's in season 1 or 2, something like that.
So at the time when you got connected with David Hodges, who obviously, I mean, had a great amount of success with Evanescence, like being one of the founding members, he wrote or co-wrote a lot of the Fallen album. I think it was called Fallen, that Evanescence released their debut album. He wrote a lot of that stuff. He ended up actually getting kicked out of the band which is quite funny, but he
also the best blessing of his life, because he had to stay home, collect checks, build his career, and to go tour and do the grueling work, really.
And I mean, when you look at the success that he ended up having beyond Evanescence, with getting connected with a lot of the American Idol people like Kelly Clarkson, Daughtry, Carrie Underwood, a bunch of these people that he had a lot of success with.
Yeah,
it really elevated his career, and he was, as you say, he was behind the scenes. He wasn't having to go out on the road with Evanescence anymore and play shows with them. Maybe as cool as that would have been, in some ways it probably was a blessing in disguise that he ended up getting the boot from the band.
Yeah, but I mean, there was also, I think they had there was a little contentions in the band too. So it's like, it was probably at the best time.
Yeah.
He was removed, but he did all the work. I mean, he essentially wrote all the songs with Amy, the singer.
I'm curious to know though, when it comes to David Hodges, because I grew up, like, as a teenager, one of my favorite bands was Evanescence. I was obsessed with Evanescence for a number of years when I was a teenager. And so it really blew my mind. I remember that one of the first times I was talking to you, and you were talking about this connection that you had with David Hodges, who had co-written a lot of Fallen, which was one of my favorite albums as a teenager. It completely blew my mind that you had that connection. And I'm curious to know, at the time when you got to know him and when you were working on those EPs with Stephen Solomon and you ended up writing with Dave, like at what point in his career was he at, and how, if he was at the point where he had already had a lot of that success, how on earth did you talk him into writing with you?
Well, he first of all, like when I met David, he had already been hugely successful. So he already had like Grammy Awards, he had plaques, and I mean, all downstairs, like kind of in the common area of the studio. I mean, walls filled with just crazy shit. Carrie Underwood, Evanescence, Josh, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Yeah, and I think Nickelback shit. Like, who else? I don't know. But then he also had like all these BMI, like songwriter awards, like certificates and shit. So it's like,
I don't know. It doesn't even matter. He pretty much worked with everyone, and I was lucky enough to be in the studio with him. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. No, for me, it's like when somebody like me comes down to a space like that, I'm like, oh my God, I've got so much work to do. What the fuck? It's just overwhelming. But David is a super humble, super friendly, very down to earth dude. He's seen it all. He's been around every big artist. He's had people in his home. He had a beautiful, he's now living in Nashville. And I think now he's just renting that house out, but the house is beautiful. It's fucking gorgeous. Everything you could imagine, driving up to this house in my shitty like Jetta. I was like driving up to his house like, oh my God, this is like the dream as a songwriter, to go and be driving up to this beautiful house in the hills. And
not to own the house, just to drive up the driveway in your shitty Jetta.
Driveway with all the grass between the cracks, and
that's how low our standards are as songwriters. Like, we don't even want to own the house. We just want to be able to drive our shitty car up the driveway to it.
But no, David, dude, like I got to know him over a few years. And when I was working on the project, I had already put out an EP with Steve. And the second go around, I just said, hey, would you want to do a co-write with Steve and I? And he was like, I would love to. And honestly, it was really the first time I asked him. I just asked him. I never asked him before. I've never been kind of like, hey, write with me. I want you to write with me. I always wanted him to write with me, but I also know from his perspective, he's probably not going to be like, I'm going to impose myself on this person's record if he's not going to ask me. And I realized it just took me asking him, and he was all about it. And so we just set up a session where probably for the first 30 minutes, we sat in his studio, me at the piano. He was sitting on the porch. We were drinking whiskey, not the porch. He was sitting on his little leather chair with his feet propped up, plucking this badass acoustic. And Steve was over at the helm, sitting at the desk, kind of getting the session prepped and ready to kind of start building. And David was kind of just plucking away and just figuring out some stuff. And I started coming up with little melody ideas, playing around on the piano. And then eventually Steve went over to the whirly, started playing some shit on the whirly, started slowly building the track up, little melody by melody. And then we'd start humming certain things. And we eventually wrote the song Imagination, don't be afraid. Yeah. And it's your imagination running, so you don't know what's coming. And that was David. That was David's idea. Your imagination running, running. And I kind of more came up with like the melodies and stuff for the verses and stuff. But he started singing this imagination thing. I was like, ooh. And it kind of just piece by piece came together. Yeah, I don't know. Like David's just like I said, he's such a humble guy. You could do a songwriter. Anybody. He would, if he had time to sit back and just write with you, and there's the circumstances are there, he's going to sit and write with you. He's going to make something.
It's such an interesting thing, because I've had experiences with other people in the industry, not with David Hodges in particular, but I have had situations with other writers and people who have had incredible amounts of success within the industry. And it's funny how it doesn't necessarily matter like how many streams you have or whether you're signed to a record label or any of that stuff, for a lot of people, particularly for a lot of writers, they're just overjoyed at the fact that they have the opportunity to write
Yeah.
and that the song that you end up writing might have have a chance of getting used on something. Because I
Right.
mean, especially in the songwriting world, and you know this from having lived in Nashville and probably written in Nashville quite a bit yourself, there are so many songs that are written that never see the light of day.
Yeah.
People write in volume and they typically throw a lot of things away. I do that personally. That's my personal approach to writing, and that's been largely influenced by the Nashville way of doing things. And I think that it has a lot of merit in a lot of ways, but it's also sad to have to just discard a lot of stuff that you actually work on. But I've had some friends who, one friend in particular that springs to mind, who had 9 number 1s in the Billboard country charts back in the 90s. And I've written with him 2 or 3 times now. He's an exceptionally talented writer. I always love writing with him. And he's just delighted. Like, if I decide that I want to use something that we've written together and I want to put that out on a project of mine, he's just delighted to be able to have something out into the world that he's written. Every single cut that he gets, no matter who the artist is, it's like this little, I think it's like this little drug that he gets, just knowing that something that he's created has been good enough to go out into the world and to get shown to everyone else, because people are so used to, in this songwriting world, in this songwriting realm, people are so used to writing so much and so much of it never
Yeah.
getting heard by anyone outside of the actual writing room where it gets written. You might have it played like at a few writers rounds every now and again, but to actually have it as a recording that
Like getting
goes
it.
out on a physical record, getting it cut on a physical record, even though physical records aren't really a thing anymore, but getting it cut, getting it
Well,
put into an audio recording and getting it put onto Spotify or iTunes or whatever it is, there's something about that that's just, there's such a sense of accomplishment with it, regardless of what level you're at or what level of success you manage to achieve. And I find that really interesting that you just said you never actually just said to David Hodges, this is a guy who's had incredible success in the industry, worked with some of the biggest artists in pop music, rock music, all kinds of things. Mentioned some of the people like Carrie Underwood, Daughtry, Kelly Clarkson, Nickelback, all of those different people that are right at the pinnacle of the music industry, of the recording industry. He's worked with all of those people, and yet it just took you to turn around to him, having some kind of personal relationship with him. You turn around to him and you say, hey, you want to try writing a song for my EP? Like, I'm not
well,
signed to
you know,
anybody.
yeah. I mean, I was coming into his house, several times a week, and for me, I mean, at first I didn't really know. Like, it wasn't until I was there where I was like, oh shit, this guy's like accomplished. This is crazy. And I didn't grow up listening to Evanescence, or I know of them. Obviously, you can't avoid what Evanescence was and how impactful they were in the early 2000s in music, early 2000s, I guess.
Early
Um,
2000s. Yeah.
and so, I didn't really know that side very well. And so it wasn't until my whole thing was when I was working at the studio, I was there to work. I was there to put together this project with Steve. And so I was super hyper focused on that work. And I also didn't want to bother him, I guess. Like, I think there was a level of like, okay, once I saw, oh shit, this guy's like, yeah, this guy's killing it. There was a little bit of a,
There's a level of intimidation there, obviously, and you kind of feel like,
I'm not here to like get in anybody's way. I'm just here to work with Steve, get it
exactly.
done. I have my goals in mind, my things I need to do. But if I can get to know David in that process, that's awesome. But I know he's working, because every day I was there, we would randomly catch each other, like grabbing a coffee or sitting in the backyard or something. But for the most part, everybody's always in a session. It was just very work style. And so, yeah, like me asking him was kind of just, I knew also there was a certain point where I was like, man, now's the time, because I want David to have a co-write on this project. Like, I've been working for 2 EPs out of his house. it's only right that he's at least co-writes on one of these songs, right? If I don't at least just cut one of his songs and just do a cover, I don't know. But I feel like there should be some sort of homage to something that I've been working on. And this was with Awake or Sleeping. And so I kind of, I was just like, hey, we should co-write. And he did. And the song was great. It's one of my favorite songs that I've done under Awake or Sleeping for sure. It's called Imagination.
I've just realized that it's Paddy's Day today when we're filming this.
It is.
Paddy's Day is a day of celebration. It's a day where we normally celebrate by drinking too much. And I've just realized that although I intended to do this from the very outset of the podcast, we haven't even taken a shot yet.
Oh, God damn it. You're going to make me do a shot?
Oh, you've got a big bottle of Jameson sitting there. You've got to pour at least one throughout the course of this podcast. I don't have a shot glass either. Do you know what I actually have? I've just moved into my grandmother's old house where you stayed when you were here in Ireland. And I don't have any shot glasses, but what I do have are little espresso cups. So I decided to use my espresso cup.
That might be the most adorable shot glass I've ever seen.
I've also got
3 fingers and pinky.
That's exactly the way I'm going to drink it. I've also just purchased from Tesco's this afternoon. Tesco's is our equivalent to your Walmart. I've just purchased this £3.85 bottle of O'Connor's Country Cream, which was a quarter of the price of the Bailey's Irish Cream liqueur. I've clearly had too much to drink already, and this shot probably isn't advisable, but you got some country cream here. You've got your bottle of Jameson, so let's get a shot poured and let's enjoy a shot.
Let me go grab a shot glass real quick.
Oh, come on, Joe.
Can I just take a swig?
Just take it out of the bottle. You don't even need it. You don't even need a shot glass.
Is that a shot?
Screw that. No. Don't take it out of the glass. You got to take it out of the bottle. You got to be hardcore. Paddy's Day. All right. And this is that's a pretty significant shot. I can't even show it to the camera because I'm going to tip it on my laptop. So cheers to you, Joe. Thank you for joining me on Me and All My Friends.
Cheers to you, man. And happy St. Paddy's Day. And I can't wait till we're together again, partying on a rooftop somewhere.
Likewise. I'm looking forward to it. Let's go for it.
Here we go.
That's actually not all that bad. Considering it is a quarter of the price of Bailey's cream liqueur, O'Connor's is holding its own at £3.85 from Tesco's.
Wow.
I don't think that was a special price either. I think that's just the standard cost of a bottle of O'Connor's.
So what would you give it on a scale from 1 to 5? How many stars?
I would say it's got to be at least a 7.
Shit. It's incredible.
It's pretty good. I mean, for £3.85.
I'm almost on the my cutoff line. And my cutoff line is really just when I know I'm going to be wasted.
Joe, it's Paddy's Day. You can't have a cutoff line. It's against the rules.
I know.
Thanks for being here.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. I feel honored and blessed. Honored and blessed. And when I say blessed, not in the religious blessed, I mean, and beyond the religious blessed, I feel very fortunate to have friends like you in my life that, over the last 3 years, we've been able to stay in contact and we're doing our journeys, but we're able to kind of have this common ground and the love for making music. And, to me, that's what it's all about. Just to wrap back in something you said with David, it's like that. I think that's the thing. It's like, there's this fundamental love for writing music that we all have. And I don't think it matters how famous you get as a songwriter or artist. If you have a love for music, there's just, yes, I'm sure at some point, maybe this other ego thing takes over and maybe you kind of go into this, thing. But I do think at the end of the day, it's like an NBA player. They had at this very early age, a love for the game. And I think that's the very core that drives me is I love making art. I love collaborating with people. And I don't ever want to stop doing that. I may get fatigued with writing. I definitely get fatigued because there was a time where I was literally writing every single day from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. Like every day I would sit and I would write a song and always have a complete song within a block of, of hours. And whether the song was great or not, or good or whatever, at least my goal was to get a song done in every sitting. And I got better and faster at writing and more confident. And that's what allowed me to even come out here and feel confident getting into co-writing sessions and stuff like that, was just being confident that, you know, I think that's the number one thing for songwriters to take away is if you know how to write music, you have to realize, like, we're all literally these like weird antennas to the universe. Like, we're sitting there in a sitting. I don't know where songs come from sometimes. I don't know how that inspiration came. I don't know why that melody all of a sudden inspired me for this one song. Like, because I could sit there and think about writing Imagination with David again, going, okay, if I were right now to jump into another songwriting session, and the goal was to write another song like Imagination, it'd be such a weird songwriting session. It would be completely fabricated. It wouldn't even feel authentic, because at that level, you know, for one, I was intimidated going into the room, because I'm like, okay, I hope I can like show up and like bring something to the table, and I'm not just going to sit here and like feel like I don't have any ideas, right? But there's this knowingness as a writer, as a creator, you have to have, and you have to really find your own wings. And I mean that so seriously, because, you know, you can be inspired by this person, this person, this person, but all of those people were always inspired enough by other people and had to find their own wings to inspire you. And so it's like a metamorphosis in art, where we're all constantly evolving, constantly inspiring each other to carry the torch forward, because at some point someone's going to fizzle out, or someone's going to become jaded, or someone's going to die off, or there's going to be a controversy and they're going to fucking fall off the map because they just couldn't hack it, or they couldn't stick to their moral compass, or whatever it may be. And I really think that's important to realize, is no matter how saturated the markets are, there's only one you, there's only one me, and my road is my road. Your road is your road. And we just so happen to crash into each other on this crazy highway of music making. And, you know, there's no accidents. There's no accidents as to where and how you get to some place. It's just all a series of doorways. And I sound like I'm being all like fucking, oh, you know, I'm serious. Like I can literally find all the linchpin moments of people that were a very big part of what propelled me forward, you know, whether that was like somebody like a Jeff Giddens, who basically just happened to be a friend of mine. I actually knew him from graphic design, and from him knowing another friend of mine, and like having, it was like from a whole other angle. It wasn't even in music. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, he had interned here. I got this gig, but then it just so happened to be like, you know, I didn't even like work with him in music. He just gave me the opportunity. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, so now I'm working with Brandon, but it was me leaving. It wasn't getting fired. It was me choosing to go. It was me deciding, okay, for me to evolve and really fly out of this tree, I have to fucking jump from this branch. And I don't know where I'm going to land. I don't know if there's a predator out there that's going to swallow me, but if I don't jump, I will never know what the hell else is out there. Because I'm not just going to be sitting here getting fucking thrown up into in my own mouth. You know, sorry, this is my Songbird reference of like baby birds in a nest. But for real, it's like at a certain point, I knew I was going to have to leave that industry, all the comforts of what that was, and find my own legs and see what happens. And if nothing happens, then nothing happens. But for some reason, I don't believe that's my journey. I don't believe, you know, I'm not somebody who sits here and goes, oh, I'm the superhero, you know, in the center of the universe kind of a thing. Because I know we're all in this, I know we're all in this fucking ocean of molecules and energy and wavelengths. And like, you have an energy, like just this conversation alone, we're putting off energy levels that are bouncing off through this room right now. And it sounds so stupid and hokey and stuff, but really when people study the human body and the way, like when people pray, you're physically putting off magnetic pulses. And I think that's the same way we receive information from the universe. And I say universe, the world, whatever, God, whatever. When it comes to songwriting, when it comes to coming to somebody's defense, say you're in a public space and someone's being attacked, and say 4 people decide to come and protect that person, that's an energy level of people coming to protect and create a force field of energy. It's literally, we do this all day long. It's just not all the time are we all equipped in whatever environment we're in. to manage the wizardry that's going on, I would say. And that was mine. Was when I was in the Christian music industry, I realized the wizardry was so fucking crazy. I couldn't hack it in that industry and do music. I would have to play in the mainstream world because I'm such a kind of fuck up kind of a person. Like, I'm so free thinking about, like, I talk shit about everything and I don't care. Like, if somebody wants to say something that's non-PC, I'm all about it because I want to know your humor. I want to know how funny and dark you can get. I want to know how loving you are, but I also want to know how fucking brutal you can be, because it makes me know the truth about you as a human being. And some people can get that edgy and some people can't. And I think there's beauty in both sides of it. I don't think there's one worse than the other. I don't think if you are somebody who spends most of your time pissing people off, you're worse than somebody who's spending most of their time getting people to gravitate to love towards them. You know, there's this weird symbiotic thing we're all doing here. And for whatever reason, my journey it's evolved in so many ways where I realize things I talk about are compromising to a degree to my career. But I also don't want to live afraid of that. I feel like my journey is in my own hands. And if it's me bending at the knee because I can't talk about something because it's too uncomfortable, that's just so stupid to me. I don't want to be known for that in 50 years. If there's people reading through our data and like reading through, like being able to like go back through history and read all of our metadata and kind of understand who we as consciousnesses while we were in these earth suits, what we were doing, I would be so embarrassed that I wasn't speaking my mind and speaking truthfully because I was afraid someone was going to think I was a crazy person. Go fuck off. Like, everyone, you know what I mean? Like,
you're talking about all this like metaphysical stuff, and you're talking about energy, and you're talking about all of these different things, like being an antenna to the universe and an antenna to God or whatever it is. Like, I'm pretty convinced that shot of Jameson, the single shot that you just took there a few minutes ago, is starting to go to your head, Joe, to be perfectly honest. I'm going to take another shot of O'Connor's Irish cream to be able to handle all of this metaphysical chat because it's so deep and so heavy.
Hey, I don't want to be a sore thumb or in the conversation or whatever.
You're not a sore thumb. You're the most wonderful
or whatever.
No, you're great, Joe. I love how all of this conversation goes off in so many different tangents. I can feel this alcohol starting to kick in, and it's getting harder and harder to focus on what you're saying exactly, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to keep up with you.
Let me slow down. I'll slow down and say this.
Take it really, really slow, like really slow. Like, if you can do like a word every 5 seconds, like that kind of slow.
Most.
See, now I'm starting to understand you.
Beautiful thing on this planet is the fact that you and I, from two different parts of the world, can come together and share this love for music, this love for having fun with drinks, poison, really. But, you know, our bodies are powerful things and we have fun with it. I feel so grateful that I can, in hindsight, kind of look back on a lot of these places I've been. And I would consider myself very observational about circumstances I find myself in. And everyone should, because at a certain point, you're going to have to walk through another door. There's always another door. There could be monsters behind it. There could be fucking flowers and fields behind it. But all of us are constantly walking through doorways. And my whole thing is, it doesn't matter what journey you're on. If you meet people along yours that have the same passion for you, for what it is that you're doing and what gives you purpose, like for us, for me, it's music. I think I could be comfortable to say for you that's making music, and you have a love for traveling and writing and collaborating and kind of just experiencing humanity from other cultures. And it's such a beautiful thing to me. It's like, that's the most pure, beautiful thing. Like, we are Dorothy on the Yellow Brick Road. The thing to me is, you know, I had the luxury when I was touring where I had downtime. So I was able to go, okay, well, I'm not married and I don't have kids and I'm not doing all this shit where I'm working a 9 to 5, then I'm coming home and I just want to drink and fucking fall asleep. I had time. So I started looking up documentaries on things, and it started expanding my mind about the world we live in. And it made me really want to understand how it is that I can experience this journey I'm on and help other people as well. Because I know, for one, I'm not falling for propaganda anymore. Like, yes, I still fall for certain things, just like anybody does. Like, obviously, you know, the news could come on and there could be a terrorist attack, and all of us are just like, oh shit, having to like figure out what it is. But now my first response now is going, this is the media now telling us a story to inflict fear upon the population. So could this be a false flag event? Could this be real? If it is real, well, what's the good in telling all of the population of the world? So there's got to be some sort of agenda behind it. So it's for me, I know people don't like that idea. They're like, not everything has an agenda. And I'm like, yeah, everything has a fucking agenda. You have an agenda when you go into Kohl's. You want to buy something that looks cool when you look at yourself in the mirror, and you don't want to waste your money on something that's shitty and hopefully not run into somebody wearing the same fucking outfit. Like, everybody has an agenda down to their clothing. And if people think that there isn't an agenda in making a record to the reason everyone, you know, is wearing a mask now when you walk outside, it's like fucking unbelievable. Like, I am so hyper aware of my freedom and how little of that we actually do have. I mean, yes, I have freedom in my studio. I can sit here and make music. But in a sense, I mean, you and I are both in our own little prisons. We are in jail. Like, I can't go to the movies. I can't just get online, go buy a movie ticket, or go buy a concert ticket at Hotel Cafe and just go see a show tonight, because there's always live music. Before pandemic, those days are done. So now it's like, me as a human soul experiencer, all I can do is weigh in my life's experience of what I'm allowed to do now and what I'm not allowed to do anymore. Like, what I used to do, what I can't do. You know, it's like we're little computers running around in bodies, just assessing. And some people have an easier time not caring, not wanting to know, not wanting to think about like a Bill Gates or, you know, certain people funding all of this virus shit. I personally believe it was all completely planned, but this is because I put time into researching it. Like, people don't even know like what is it? Let me get the name because I don't want to fuck it up. Crimson Contagion. It has a goddamn Wikipedia page. Crimson Contagion. Get this, and this is me. I'm just going to throw this at you, if you don't mind me humoring you. And this is why it'll be funny, because this kind of plugs into a lot of. I know I talk a lot, but just this.
Joe.
I know, but
there
just
are
this.
A lot of words that come out of your mouth. So many words.
I know,
and it's so hard to follow along with the words whenever I've just taken 5 shots of Bailey's or.
Okay, so let me humor you.
O'Connor's cream liqueur. Or Irish cream or whatever it is. It's so hard to follow, Joe.
Let me take you and your listeners, and also you can cut this part out, but I did want to say this because this will tie into everything from the very top of this interview.
Well, I'm not cutting it out. I'm just going to pour myself another shot of O'Connor's Irish cream liqueur. A little plug for these guys. Please sponsor my video. Please send me a few more free bottles of this wonderful £3.85 liqueur that you've sold to me.
There's got to be a way.
Humor me, Joe. Humor me with this contagion chat.
And again, I don't think Wikipedia is the harbinger of truth. I think they are definitely they're in the back pocket of their shareholders. But
what do you mean they're not the harbinger of truth? I thought that all truth was found in Wikipedia.
Well, whatever. Maybe Google and Wikipedia. Okay, so Crimson Contagion was a joint exercise conducted from January to August 2019. So this is the year prior to COVID. So, in which numerous national, state, and local private and public organizations in the U.S. participated in order to test the capacity of the federal government and the 12 states to respond. So there was 12 states involved to a severe pandemic of influenza originating in China. So this was a exercise that they set this up in 2019, right? The simulation, which was conducted months prior to the start of COVID-19 pandemic, involves a scenario in which tourists returning from China spread a respiratory virus in the United States, beginning in Chicago. In less than 2 months, the virus had infected 110 million Americans, killing more than 500,000. The report issued at the conclusion of the exercise outlines the government's limited capacity to respond to a pandemic, with federal agencies lacking the funds. Notice all the $2 trillion stimulus bills that have been since passed, over $4 trillion. Okay, so let me just say, lacking of funds, coordination, and resources to facilitate an effective response to the virus. So they did this scenario in 2019, ending in August. So in October, then they ran Event 201, which was including the World Health Organization, CDC, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the UN, multiple agencies in Europe, within the Five Eye community, which is an intelligence, it's like Europe, Australia, New Zealand, the US, and I believe Canada. But it's all like the CIA, and it's MI6, all the intelligence agencies of all these countries, they share their information. It's called the Five Eyes. And so I'm sitting here going, wow, they did these tabletop exercises in 2019 prior to me ever even knowing these events existed. Because of course, the media doesn't report this stuff, right? This goes back to...
Are you looking at a response there? Yes, right.
Well, this goes back to, this is what I'm saying. I'll just wrap it up with this. Is we see reality in a very small, narrow window view based on what it is we choose to see. Whether you're consumed with sports, movies, Netflix, Kardashians, whatever it is, the average person doesn't give a fuck about, you know, why we just went and bombed a bunch of places in Syria or why we're fucking with Iran. Literally, people don't care. They're like, as long as it's not here. And I'm going, it's gonna be here. It's coming. It's already begun. And it's like, the perfect example of that is, what did Americans learn about Nazi Germany, for instance? It was that the people of Germany were basically propagandized into a state of Stockholm syndrome where people didn't really recognize exactly what was going on. It was mainly the corporations leading the charge of what was ultimately Hitler's ultimate objective, which was, which again, I don't necessarily disagree with nationalism, but a eugenics side of the spectrum where it's like a racial thing, like Jews are bad, or if you think this way, you need to go to a concentration camp or you need to go to a re-educational camp. Like it was the very first time in history we really saw in a modern-ish kind of state how a government, like a modernized country that was like full of the arts and full of like, it had nothing to do with like this authoritarian fascist shit that really did unfold, during World War II. And it's happening. The same process that went on over there is happening and unfolding right here. And I guess I've just been able to recognize it because I had the luxury of looking into stuff like this because I was touring. I had downtime to sit backstage and look up a conspiracy or listen to a podcast or whatever it was. Someone along my route said, hey, it's like Willy Wonka. There's more to my chocolate factory than you think. We're not just making candy here. And that is something that's constantly led me through multiple doors. And for me, man, it's like, it's so important to just have an open mind, but also, I also recognize how it's been detrimental when it comes to, well, Joe, what do you believe in? Do you believe in a religion? Do you believe that the government's all corrupt? Or do you believe? I don't know. I just know that there is corruption at the highest levels. People can be the biggest pieces of shit. There are people like Jeffrey Epstein's who have islands and they're basically abusing children over there. It's like, yes, these things are happening and they're getting covered up by the very institutions we're getting all of our information from, who we're supposed to bend our knees to. And it's like, what line in the sand as a human do I have to say, I just don't want to play that anymore? How do I think for myself? And how do I find other communities out there in the music industry, film industry, people in the podcast industry free thinking industry.
Like me, people in the podcast industry like me that are creating podcasts for people to consume and enjoy.
100%. 100.
I'm contributing to the problem. Is that what you're saying?
No, you're contributing a good thing, because you're allowing us to have an open conversation, unless you chop this entire interview.
Well, I'm going to chop the whole thing up. Like, there's going to be this. We've been chatting for like 4.5 hours now. I'm going to chop this up to like 10 minutes max.
I wouldn't blame you. I'm sorry. I do talk a lot. My whole thing, man, is I've become so passionate about, like, I don't really know ultimately at the end of the day. I love making music, but man, I feel like there's so much more important things happening in the world. I'm still trying to figure out how to put that in my music and write the right things and say the right things. But at the same time, I'm also I'm a human, and I love conversing, and I love debating, and I love having conversation. And so a very important part of that for me has been in podcasting and sharing my voice. And even if I'm wrong, I don't care. I don't care. I can be wrong, and I can apologize, and I can, eat my own fucking foot, whatever. I've been wrong multiple times, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I'm always about learning so I can help other people, because we're in a very vicious reality. And yeah, a lot of people I looked up to, unfortunately, I do think a lot of people sell their souls, even though the public looks at them as saints. I don't think they're all saints, unfortunately. And there is a moral issue that we all do face. And sometimes it just takes a rabbit hole dive to understand who you are in it. Because at the end of the day, it's like, if you read Harry Potter and all that shit, imagine if there was no Harry. We would just be watching a bunch of empty rooms and a bunch of kids walking around in a bunch of stupid bullshit school drama. And there would be no actual journey of someone going to destroy the evil that was upon that whole world that they were in, just to go into that, to try to get people to understand what it is we're dealing with. We are in a situation right now where we are the wizards of our world. I don't care what religion you are. You're still a wizard, because if you can walk into a room and say, fuck you to somebody and see the reaction they have, you just literally cast a spell out. You don't even have to hit somebody. You don't even have to you could just say something in someone's face and you'll get a response. That's magic. That's a word. That's using an energy. And we've kind of we put stuff in kind of a storybook kind of mentality when it comes to magic and what that means. But really, magic is all around us. And if you're dabbling in music, once you get to a certain level, I do think you recognize at a certain point, you are messing with energy and you are playing with magic. I do think, I really do.
It's funny you're talking about magic, and we're talking about all of these crazy things that go on in the world and in the background that a lot of us are completely unaware about. I was actually perusing through Instagram and Facebook earlier, and I happened to stumble upon a story that a friend of mine had posted about how St. Patrick was very far from a saint. And obviously we're recording this on St. Patrick's Day. But when you bring up the topic of magic, there was this whole thing about how what she was saying, and I haven't really looked into it or I haven't really researched it anymore, was that St. Patrick actually came, I guess, to spread the Christian word, to spread the good word of Jesus and the good word of Christianity and the good news of Jesus' salvation and all of that stuff. But the reality was that in doing so, he was essentially doing away with a lot of the Irish tradition and a lot of the ideas and myths and legends about fairies and magic culture and all of that kind of crazy stuff that would largely be associated with paganism. And I thought that it was a really interesting, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest, but I thought it was a really interesting thing that, just like in the Crusades, where Christians basically went out into the world and just savaged the world in order to put their Christianity upon other people. It's such an interesting thing that people feel like they need to do away with the other things that have come before,
Yeah, and the thing is like all the most atrocious shit that's happened on our planet has been at the hands of elites. They've been by the hands of these elite religious figures, because even back in the day, every priest, I mean, look at these fucking castles they're in. and they're looked at like gods. And you think about the power that they hold over a community. In my opinion, all of this was always about power. It was always about control. And when you live in a society where everyone can have their own God and create their own reality, you've got people who are thinking in so many different boxes. And ultimately, I do believe religion kind of came along to kind of focus the attention a little more, so the powers that be, the kings in the castles, could control people with the fear of God, with the fear of, if you commit the ultimate sin against the word of God, we can put you to death. And so it's just, unfortunately, I think so many things have been bred out of tyranny. I think ultimately, like where you and I stand in history, we're fortunate enough to now see that I do think there's beautiful shit in Christianity in the long run. I think the human spirit always filters the information, no matter how fundamental or no matter how radical an idea could be. It can always look through and filter out what was good out of something. And eventually you'll whittle down to the human being that takes some of it and leaves the most of it. They'll take some of it and they're a very loving person. And you find that person has whittled it down to the parts that reflect love out of them. The parts that make me want to love other people are the reasons that I've gone, yeah, I think when you have a good, solid moral compass, it means you're going to weigh every decision you make based off of violating other people. Like, are you going to be someone that violates other people or not? It's all about self-control. It's all about, true community shit. I'm not talking about wearing a mask and this fake bullshit where, oh, if I wear a mask, I'm going to save your grandma in the store. Like, man, like so many people don't understand that, for one, it's the equivalent of an obese person coming up to me saying, I want you to go exercise so I can lose weight. It's like, wait a minute. Your health was never in my hands. My health was never in your hands. My health is up to me. I know when I drink this drink, I'm putting my life at risk, which is why I love living life. And I love going out on the street, not wearing a mask, because if I do pick up a virus, I believe I was born on a planet where I can fight viruses with my body.
Well, I mean, to some degree, it is down to both of us. I mean, to completely disregard the idea that it's solely up to you, like it's solely up to your immune system to be able to fight that stuff. Rather, sorry, that's the O'Connor's Irish cream kicking in. It's getting very difficult to articulate the words and the thoughts that are coming to my brain.
Yeah.
But the thing is that to completely disregard this idea that other people can have an effect on us, I think is kind of in some ways foolish. At the end of the day, viruses do spread by somebody being sick and somebody coughing or somebody whatever over someone else, or being spread out into the air and somebody else picking it up from that. The interesting thing that I find about this whole thing is the fact that we are being made to be afraid of each other, and the idea that at the end of the day, like the cold and the flu and all of this stuff has existed. It always floats around the air. And the reality is that our bodies are always kind of fighting off all of these things.
That's
But
how you
there's such an interesting thing going on at the minute where we're being made afraid of each other because we're being fearful, or we're being made to be fearful of making each other sick. And that's such an interesting thing. And that really struck me from the very outset of the pandemic.
All the while, we're also lowering our immune systems, because when you wear a mask, you're lowering your immune system because you're fucking, I forget the scientific term around it, but it's an actual thing. It's not like, oh, this is a conspiracy theory. This is what's happening right now, is never happened in history. And I know people go, oh, well, in China, people were always wearing masks. China is literally under...
I can tell you for a fact, I have been to Beijing a couple of times now. The only people, and I have been informed this by a friend who actually lived in China for 3 or 4 years. She told me that the only people that wear masks in China are the people who have traveled outside of China and who are aware of how bad the pollution actually is in China. I have been in Beijing myself a couple of times, and the reality is that the vast majority of the population do not wear masks.
Yeah.
And the reality is that they don't wear masks because they have absolutely no idea how bad that pollution actually is that they're living in from day to
But now
day.
the mask doesn't matter because you're still going to breathe it in.
The first time that I was in Beijing, no joke, the first time that I was in Beijing, I got invited over to play at an event. It was a private function for a bunch of like ambassadors and all kinds of different people. It was an Irish ball in Beijing. It actually happened on St. Patrick's Day. It was probably back in 2013, 2014. I think I played both years, 2013 and 2014 in Beijing. And the first year that I arrived in Beijing, I got to my hotel. We were staying in the Shangri-La Hotel in Beijing. It was a beautiful place. It was an awesome trip. But I always remember I stepped off the plane. When I arrived in Beijing, I got a transfer through Abu Dhabi. So I flew Dublin to Abu Dhabi to Beijing. When I stepped off the plane in Beijing, it honestly smelt like walking in to my grandmother's house after she had had the fire lit for about 6 hours before I arrived. It hit you so hard when you just stepped off the plane. I wasn't even out in the open air. I was on the jet bridge into the airport, and it was so strong it completely took over you. And that like carcinogenic smoky smell that just lingered in the air constantly. I remember we arrived in the Shangri-La where we were staying. We went out the first night that we got there. We were probably going out for dinner or just to explore the city a little bit. When we walked around the city, we literally walked out the front door of our hotel. This was in central Beijing. I walked out the front door of my hotel. There was a high-rise building no more than 200 feet from the front door of the hotel. This was a pretty built up area of the city. I could not see beyond the third floor of this high rise building. The smog was so bad in the city. It was unbelievable, completely mind blowing. I have never, ever in my life seen pollution as bad as it was in Beijing. My friend who lived there was originally from Dublin. Her husband got a job with a construction firm. He worked for a construction firm in Dublin, and they decided they were going to expand out into China. And so they sent him out to China to be part of the team in China trying to buy over companies or whatever it was that they were doing. They ended up moving over there. And she told me that however they measure the pollution rates, if you measure the pollution in a city like Dublin or Belfast, maybe even London, I think they use a scale. I think the unit of measurement that they use is called PSI from memory. I could be wrong in saying that. I would need to Google that to check. But I think it's PSI that they measure it in units. She said that on an average day, the city of Dublin sits at a PSI of around 5. On an average day in Beijing, the PSI is around 300.
I mean,
that's like what, 60 times?
Gotta get out of there. Gotta get out.
And that's what's so fascinating. Like the idea that you're talking about people wearing masks in a country like China, and not even in a city like Beijing, but a country like China, of people wearing masks constantly. Those people are living in that exceptional pollution.
Yeah.
And you can't fathom the pollution. Like most of us in the Western world can't understand. You walk outside your front door and you can't see the building that's 300 feet away. That's how bad it is. It's like being caught in the middle of a forest fire.
I'm going to see a little bit of that out here in California, you know, because LA gets pretty smoggy at times.
Yeah, of course.
But it's a lot of it has to do with, you know, the air pressure and the heat and the temperature and all that stuff, because it's worse definitely by far in the summertime when it's hotter. But yeah, it's just it's not good, you know. It's not good for anybody to be breathing any of that shit in. But at the same time, you know, like I said, man, we as people, we're trying to coddle each other in a way that's just so unnatural. Like if you live in Beijing, you're signing up to potentially poison yourself to death and die young. That's it. There's no way to get around that. because the government there isn't being held, their balls aren't being fucking held to the flame to figure out technologies to clean the air out properly. They're not. And so you just have to go, well, I'm here for the experience, and that's that. We all sign up for that. I mean, what I know that's such a weird way to think about it, because we all want to live forever, right? But I mean, we're trying to, it's like people are we're trying to be taught, we're being taught like that life is just, you know, we're tiptoeing on glass. And I'm like, every time I get in my motherfucking car, like I could die. And my life expectancy is 100% put at risk every time I get in my car versus if I stay home.
Every time you walk out your front door, even when you don't walk out your front door, your life's still at risk. Like this idea that we're so afraid of death all the time, it's inevitable for all of us. But the reality is that we're so scared of it all the time.
Being pushed hard, and it's being pushed in a way. And this is why I think it's important for people to start going, well, maybe the way this is unfolding for us, like for instance, it's like, okay, the pandemic is what we've been told. So there's that. And then the pandemic is all of the people that are getting shut down and censored. And then there's that. So there's two sides of it. So all of us pretty much know what the main narrative is, whether you choose to go, well, what are these guys talking about? Because there's people getting censored off of Twitter right now because, and these are doctors. We're talking about major doctors who, you know, have been doing this shit for 25 plus years. They have practices. They're getting censored. They're getting shut off Twitter all of a sudden out of nowhere. Why? Because they are just.
Hey, Donald Trump got shut off Twitter. I mean,
which he should not have been. And people will sit there and go, yeah, well, he was saying dangerous things and inciting violence. Inciting violence? Where?
I don't even know why I mentioned Donald Trump, Joe, because I knew that I should have known that was going to take the conversation off on an entirely different tangent. And there's already enough tangents right now, Joe. We need to keep. I know,
but you know what? Here's the thing. If somebody like a Donald Trump wants to incite violence, which I don't believe he did, because if you're of a sound thinking person, you weren't incited to do anything. You're just listening to what he has to say. He's got a perspective of reality. You listen to it. You agree with some things. You can agree with other things. You can disagree with some things. He's just like anyone else on the planet. Why all of a sudden is he a Stalin or a fucking Hitler when we are now dealing with a situation in America? This is specifically America, where basically the same people that have been in control of this country forever are now back in control of this country that they've had under Bush, under Clinton, under Obama. Because think of all the wars that were started and all of the changing of the guards that went on. If you actually pay attention to American politics, this is very real. This is very serious. These are very real families that are pandering to a specific agenda that is run by the richest people on our planet. And Donald Trump was the very first personal self-made to a degree. I mean, yes, his family, his dad, you know, was in real estate and gave him loans and got his feet. I mean, who fucking wouldn't if you were rich? If I'm rich, I'm going to definitely give my kid money to do shit. Like, give me a break. Why is that?
I'm rich. I'm not giving my kid anything. I'm going to give it all to, I'm going to give it all to, I don't know who, somebody that actually needs it.
If my kid has good ideas, I'm going to definitely support them. I'm not going to make them start from ground zero. Why the fuck would I do that? That's not what life is about. It's about building something that makes the world a better place. And
do you not think though that starting from ground zero, my belief is that in having to start from ground zero, the fact that you've got to start from that level of humility and you've got to actually build something from nothing is actually much more character building than somebody handing you everything. And it's not to say that they hand you everything, but if someone hands you an awful lot of money from the outset of your life, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to do things.
Well, for sure. But I mean, what I'm saying is if I make millions of dollars and I'm lucky enough to have a family and I raise a son or a daughter, and one day they can take on whatever it is I built, because I want to build shit that does make the world a better place. And I also want to build like like post-production facilities and create event houses and build art museums and things like that. Like I have ideas for things that I can't do right now because it costs millions upon millions of dollars to do. But there's a part of me that wants to always keep the arts at the forefront of society's mind, no matter how rich people are on the planet, at least in communities, and at least people who are working in the arts, such as myself. I'm poor as fuck and I get by, and it may not look like that because I'm in my studio and all this shit, but literally I don't have a brand new car. I'm not paying for a fucking car. I'm not, I don't have a 401k. I don't have health insurance, dental insurance. I'm literally getting by because this is the road I've chosen to do. But my whole thing is we as people are here to make the world a better place. I really do think that for me is something I'm convicted by. And if I'm lucky enough to have money and make money or create something that has residual income, such as, I mean, in the music world, if you write a fucking evergreen, say you write a All I Want for Christmas Is You, you're set. And your kids are definitely going to be set. It's just, what do you instill in your kids? And that's the difference. If you raise your kids to be a bunch of assholes, that's really on you and your legacy. It's not on your kid. Your kid should be raised to understand how to be a good person. And I really do think that's on parents. And I think that's on building a good society that has moral fucking compasses ingrained in the institutions. And unfortunately, society's getting away with that because everyone's offended by stuff, when in reality, people just forgot that they could fucking close out a window and put a thumbs down or not watch something. Everyone's just choosing to get mad at somebody because they think differently. And now it's creating a toxic environment where no one can say anything without getting reprimanded or having a fear of being reprimanded, which is toxic.
Tell me this. Do you have any interest in investing in a new company that wants to build a rocket to start to colonize Mars? Because I'm really interested at the minute in trying to go up against Elon Musk to be one of the first people to go and colonize Mars, because I honestly, the way that global warming's going and all that stuff, I think that there's maybe not a lot of hope for this planet, and there's maybe not a lot of hope for humanity. So maybe me and you should start a business venture, and we should build a rocket that's going to bring enough people to Mars. I mean, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of people. We've just got to build it kind of like Noah's Ark. And we've got to make sure that there's enough men and women that we're able to procreate and continue on humanity on another planet. And if that's something that you're maybe interested in going in on as a business venture, all I'm going to need is maybe around $2 million plus. I mean, it might be slightly over $2 million. I don't know if you have that kind of money lying around. I mean, if you want to go in on that, I mean, I feel like we could give Elon Musk a run for his money.
Look, the world is chess. All I got to do is move a couple things around. I can loosen up some money here and there.
Yeah. You got to cash in a few ISAs, get some bank savings together. You'll be able to get that. You'll be able to get that couple of mil together in no time, Joe. I can believe it. You're working with David Hodges and all these crazy people in the industry. You've got to have 2 million knocking around somewhere.
You don't even know, man. No, you know the game. You know it's brutal. Like, my whole thing is this, like, I don't know what, at the end of the day, if reptilians and aliens and all this shit is happening. I don't know.
Oh, let's not get into the reptilians. Let's not start talking about the reptilians.
No.
I'm at least halfway through this bottle of O'Connor's. I can't deal with the talk of reptilians.
Bro, I'm sparing you. I'm saying I don't know. I'm basically taking all that shit and wiping it off the table of discussion, because
I'm just saying I don't want to know. I don't want to know because I'm halfway through a bottle of O'Connor's. The O'Connor's only cost me £3.85.
Oh man, can I talk to you?
Drunk at the moment.
The planet that's just outside of our solar system that's on its way to destroy us.
Oh, Joe, don't even talk to me about it. As long as it's not headed for Mars, where me and you are going to build a rocket to go to, then I'm happy enough.
But here's the thing. That's the detriment to myself, is like, those kinds of stories, I am so all about it. I don't know why, even though it's terrifying. I've watched so many documentaries where I'm like, oh my God. But then at the end of the day, I go, you know what? I wasn't like designed to like live in fear on this planet. So I always kind of default to that. My mom's trying to call me, but I always default to that. And I'm just like, we weren't born here to live in fear. This is why I'm looking at the pandemic going, I'm not buying this fear anymore. Look, I know people are dying. I'm not saying they're not, but look at the flu numbers. Those went away. And it's the pandemic numbers that have literally replaced the flu numbers. So obviously people are dying from viruses every fucking year, and it's awful. But at the end of the day, people are dying from so many things. And now that we're starting to be nitpicky and look at, oh, now if I go in public and I'm not wearing a mask, or I do this, or I do the wrong thing, or I stand too close to you, now I'm the weapon of mass destruction. This is the biggest threat to our reality as human beings globally. I don't give a fuck what country you're from. If we become the weapon in this world, what the fuck is the point of living on this planet? That is not a world I want to live in. And it's not an idea that I want to be a part of pushing. So I'm not going to be somebody that works at a restaurant or works in an establishment where I'm telling people what to do. Oh, you need to put this mask on, blah, blah, blah. If I worked at a place where I had to do that every day, I would quit because I couldn't do it. I would literally not want to do it and be a part of it. I feel blessed right now that I'm home and I can work from home and be in my studio and all this shit. And man, like the complacency and the compliance, the obedience required to play out this game that's being pushed upon us. The next phase is the vaccine, mandatory vaccines. It's happening. And I'm telling you, the only reason I talk about this because it's in our reality now. This is not just, oh, well, we'll see if it goes there. Come on, man. You know what's going there. I know what's going there.
Do you think that COVID-19 has made its way to Mars yet? Because if we can build a rocket to Mars now and we can get to Mars soon, then maybe we can get there before COVID-19 gets there. Maybe COVID-19 can't even survive on Mars, and maybe we can just get away from it all. Joe, maybe we could start, if you just transfer me your $2 million that you have lying around in ISAs and bank accounts in the US. Maybe if you just transfer me that money now, then we can build a rocket. We can get out of this whole shitstorm that's going on with COVID-19. We can start to build our new civilization on Mars, and then we're going to be fine.
Here's the thing though, Warren, I believe we as humans can fix this. I think it's going to just take a lot of people talking and getting uncomfortable and sharing information that's very uncomfortable, because our world is, think about the Epstein alone. I don't know how deep you went into that, but you know enough to go, oh, Epstein, pedophile, blah, 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 had an island, like young girls. That sends a red flag where people are like, oh my God, what the fuck? So people don't want to look at it. But this is nothing new. Peter Nygaard, another mogul, just got caught. Another mogul with an island. Look him up. Same fucking shit. We're in a world right now where we are having to slowly wake each other up and go, what are we going to do? Are we just going to escape? Because if that's our game, if you and I are going, okay, let's just make a rocket and get out of here. Well, I know right now there's people like Richard Branson and Elon Musk and, the NASA organization, now Space Force, things like that. The fucking, the Russian space program, Chinese space program. There are bodies of people that are actively trying to get off this planet. Now, how far they've gone, what they know, who knows? I don't know. But there's people that are so far ahead of that game than you and I could ever be. Their whole end of the game is AI. It's being able to take your consciousness, put it into a robot. I know this sounds crazy. I don't know how deep you've got into this, but that is, you have your show called Down the Rabbit Hole. That's the end of the game for all these tech people, is they do believe they can put themselves and live infinitely as gods as an AI, where they're literally just living through machines completely and controlling machines that are basically just operating the planet. And so when you go, okay, well, what about the people that are supposed to maintain the robots? Well, robots will maintain the robots. They'll figure all that shit out. They already have. And this also dips into like free energy devices and things that are being suppressed from the public, technologies that haven't been shared with us that, certain people have come out and whistleblown about, and that were very high level military personnel, CIA, FBI, people who have, they just happened to work on a case and they got to learn about something, and all of a sudden they're like fucked up for life about it. And they go out and they talk about it. But you're like, wait, dude, you're like this crazy conspiracy old man, but yet you did have this crazy FBI career. What the fuck? Like, are you just making shit up to like confuse people? And so I've always been someone that's very curious about these things, because it shows me that there's something more to this reality. Now, what that is, that's up to all of us to figure out. Some people just want to stay in the matrix. and they want to eat the steak and they don't want to know that it's just zeros and ones. And some
or
people,
vegan steak for those of us who are vegan out there, like you are.
well, I'm a vegetarian, but I eat a lot.
I apologize.
No,
Vegetarian. It's a very different thing.
I'm not offended by any of that. Honestly, you know, I don't judge people for how they eat. You know, I don't think it's my place to tell anybody else what they should and shouldn't do. I just go, I like to talk about certain things, and I know that I've dealt with people thinking I'm crazy. And I'm at this place where I'm like, I didn't make any of this up.
Joe, I think that you're a little bit crazy. I think that you're worrying about things unnecessarily. And the reason why I say that is that I think that the reality is that if you just transfer me that $2 million, we start a rocket company and we get the rocket underway to Mars. I think that it's going to be me, Joe, and Elon Musk hanging out on Mars. We're going to need a few females there to procreate with and to start a new population with there. But I think we're going to have a good time. I think me, you, and Elon Musk could hang out okay. I think that we're all intelligent enough and that we could have a good time there. And I think we could create an interesting civilization.
Yeah, I don't think it would last very long because our Sigourney Weaver AI robots that we have to mate with to make babies, because everything's done on a petri dish out there on Mars.
Forget about the robots. I think we just fucking drive each other crazy, to be perfectly honest.
The robots wake up one day and they're like, I'm done making coffee for you, Joe. I'm done complying. And you're like, no, don't you put that hammer to the glass.
I feel like we need to take it back and we need to bring it back to something a little more lighthearted. So what I really want to talk about right now, this was something that we talked about. One of the previous conversations that we had, you told me this interesting story about how you met Taylor Swift in the Ryman Auditorium, backstage in the Ryman Auditorium. And I want you to tell the listeners on Me and All My Friends a little bit about that encounter that you had with Taylor Swift.
It was a foggy, brisk night in Nashville, Tennessee. So I was at the Ryman Auditorium. My buddy Brandon, who I was playing for, who we talked about in the first hour, 5 hours ago.
In the first hour, 5 hours ago, in hour one of this 6 hour podcast that we have now had.
They were playing. It was one of the concert nights, songwriter nights. And it was a fucking badass lineup of all these songwriters in Nashville, sold out show at the Ryman. And Taylor Swift comes in.
The Ryman Auditorium, for anyone who doesn't know out there, who's listening to this podcast that has never been to Nashville, Tennessee, that doesn't know anything about Nashville, Tennessee, the Ryman Auditorium is described as the mother church of country music. It is where I can't even remember the radio station that broadcast the Grand Ole Opry initially, but It is where the Grand Ole Opry essentially started. It is where countless classic country artists have performed over the years. Joe was playing a show with Brandon Heath. Everybody who's anybody has played at the Ryman Auditorium.
Throughout history of music, they have played the Ryman, if it existed.
So you're playing the Ryman, right? You're playing the Ryman with Brandon. You're playing this Songwriters Night.
I was not playing. I was there supporting, but I was hanging out just filming. Because at that time I was literally just doing random shit. If I wasn't playing, I was there documenting or like filming stuff backstage.
That's less cool. I thought that this story was much cooler than it was, Joe, because you were actually playing at the Ryman, but this is much less cool. I think we should scrap this story entirely. No, I'm only joking, of course. I think that the fact that you met Taylor Swift is definitely worth covering. So please continue with your story.
Now that I've totally tainted what could have been such a fucking superhero story, I was wearing these sparkly leather pants.
Oh, that's pulled it right back. That's pulled it right back.
I was on a fucking pulley system coming down mid stage. No.
Just like Pink. You're like Pink.
Broke. I swung out into the audience, broke off, and landed in Taylor Swift's lap. And so for the past 8 years, I've been fighting a lawsuit because apparently I shattered one of her ribs in the process.
Oh, that's no good.
Doing the Ryman Auditorium, it's been kind of a mess. This whole thing is just a big legal battle.
You don't want to get sued by Taylor Swift. That's the last person you want to be in a lawsuit with.
No, hell no. Okay, so yeah, so I was literally just backstage filming stuff. I was watching the show. I was sitting in the top balcony center. And then I saw like all these people start like looking over because, of course, you know, as any celebrity does, they come in and they have they're fashionably late. Of course, I mean, I don't give a fuck who's playing on stage. The second Taylor Swift walks in and there's lights, you know, on the stage, and you can see a little glow of her body walking through, and people just start like looking. It's just it's a energetic thing. It's wild. It was wild to watch that happen because I'd never really seen anything like that. And so, by the way, Alison Krauss was playing that night.
Oh, you're killing me. I love Alison Krauss.
Station. Need to Breathe was there. So Taylor was there because she was vetting Need to Breathe. They were performing and she wanted to see, because she eventually had them on tour with her. And so she was there to kind of see what they were all about and see how their live show went and just probably hang out and mingle and meet. She was there to also meet Taylor Swift.
She was there to meet herself. What an egotist.
He was there. There's just one room with a mirror.
She's like, I hear that Taylor Swift's going to be here tonight. I better go to the Ryman and check it out, because if Taylor Swift's going to be there, like, I got to meet Taylor Swift. She's a pretty big deal.
Oh my God. It's just a mirror, and it's like a Sharpie with a piece of paper. She can like give herself her own autograph. Put it through a little slot of the glass. So she comes in. She sits down, sees the show. But anyway, at a certain point, I'm like, okay, I need to go and get my shit from the green room, and I'm going to go home. And so I go to the green room. My camera's gone. So apparently the crew that had been cleaning up all the green rooms, because by the end of the show, I guess they were starting to clean shit up. Somebody picked up my camera. It was missing. And at the time, it was like this little Vado HD, just this shitty little, like, you click and record, let go of the record button, it stops recording. You just hold it, you pocket it, and it's always ready to go. That's basically what the technology was at the time. And so it's missing from the green room, and I'm like, oh, fuck. So I'm on the phone, and then I find a guy in the hallway that's walking around, and I'm like, hey, and I start telling him what's going on. But at this time, I'm telling him Taylor Swift is walking by in all her beauty. You know, the fucking angels are rubbing my nipples.
The angels just follow her around all the time.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh my God, that's Taylor Swift. Oh my God, she's tall. And I just remember thinking she's tall. And so she walks by, but I'm like, okay, I need to get my camera. So I'm talking to this dude. And he's like, yeah, if you just go to ground floor, there's the fucking lost and found guy. You'll see blah, 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 the desk, and he'll tell you what to do. And there's a lost and found, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay,
meanwhile,
cool.
Taylor Swift just floats in with your camera in her hand. And she says, oh,
yeah.
Here is your camera, Joe. This is what you've been looking for.
She was absolutely stunning when I met her. I could not get my eyes off of her because she was so beautiful. And she was genuinely concerned about me and my stupid ass camera. So we ride the elevator down to ground level, but she gets off because she's going to meet other people or whatever. Well, I'm sitting at this desk and telling the guy my camera's missing. He's like, all right, let me see if I can track it down. Meanwhile, he's probably on the phone. He's like, hey, you need to get back here. He fucking found out. We can't hawk this thing. Probably trying to sell it to TMZ or some shit. Because I'm back there, filming everybody in their panties. No, I'm kidding. But like I'm some creep back there, like filming behind the scenes shit. No, but like, just like people hanging out. And honestly, like, I don't think anything ever happened with the footage. I don't even know what I did with it, to be quite honest. I don't think I put a video out with it. Anyway, long story short, I'm sitting there waiting. She comes down the staircase, locked eyes with me. She comes down, she passes me, and she goes and meets fucking Alison Krauss in her dressing room. I can see them go behind that. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool, Alison. Because even then, I'm like, I was a huge Alison fan, and Union still am. And so that was monumental. Like, she is a fucking legend to me. Like, and I got to hear her perform, and So I can kind of see it's a who's who. Like everyone's going to meet her in this environment. It's like all these people who could, under the circumstance be going, oh my God, I'm a huge fan of this person or this person or this person. All of a sudden it's like, whoa, no, the night was about Alison Krauss. And so it was cool to see Taylor Swift in that moment going to like meet her, and like, I guess just hang out or whatever. And so I'm still waiting for my fucking thing. She ends up coming out, leaving. They're going out the back entrance. She ends up coming back and telling me, hey, it was good to meet you. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Caught eyes with her. Felt like we had a moment, truly. I truly felt like we had a moment. It could have just been me under the spell, like every other, fucking drooling boy in the world. You know what I'm saying? Or girl, there's a lot of girls out there that want to have a little Scissor Sister time. You know what I'm saying? Remember that band, Scissor Sisters? I don't think it was talking about them cutting up fabrics.
How could I forget them?
Yeah. But yeah, like it was a very surreal, bizarre scenario. Like I felt like I had this moment with Taylor Swift that was so stupid, but it was like a timeout from reality, truly. Because typically, like I would have just been there to film some stuff, then probably go home, have a drink with my roommates, smoke some weed, get up and go to a coffee house, maybe write some music, or have to go and be on a bus. It's like at that time, I had nothing really else going on besides performing and then staying home and just living in Nashville. But even then I wasn't really doing a lot of Nashville-y things. I wasn't going to like every fucking indie Nashville country underground thing or anything like that, songwriter thing or whatever. I was kind of in this little pocket, but I was still an outsider to a degree. I hate saying that. That sounds fucking awful. But I do feel like a lot of my time in Nashville, I was so in the middle of everything, but I was also very much just a passerby, I guess. It's how I've always felt. Kind of interesting.
I feel like you're kind of underselling the whole situation though, because I remember you describing it to me before as a situation where you were obviously concerned about the fact that you had been filming footage for whoever it was that you were filming for at the time. You had lost this camera.
Yes.
Clearly like a little bit stressed out at the fact that you had lost the camera that you had filmed all this footage on.
It had a bunch of like backstage stuff, people talking, meeting each other, saying some shit. It's like typically the stuff that, a lot of these people I'm around at the time, they were getting write-ups in People magazine, and there is very much a PR team around them and what is allowed out. And I was entrusted to like film some stuff and like take on that side of their, have that lens to a degree. And ultimately it didn't last because I personally didn't really enjoy doing it. It just became more responsibility. And honestly, I just wanted to play keys and go home and smoke weed and have some whiskey. And just, I didn't want to like have to edit videos for people. And that's not my vibe. It's just not. And so I whittled my way out of it. But yes, at the time I had this camera that had some shit on it that I was nervous that it was missing.
But I remember you telling me that Taylor Swift was actually concerned, like she almost picked up on the fact that you were worried about this. I remember you describing it to me in that way, where the fact that
Taylor Swift kind of I skipped over being like, so she overheard the conversation because I was talking to the guy, the dude in the red shirt that fucking works at the.
Don't skip over anything, Joe. You've got an open forum here to talk about how you and Taylor Swift had a moment and how you missed out on that moment.
Challenging my foggy fucking smitten memory. So I was standing there talking telling the guy that I was missing this Vado, this camera. And at the time they passed me by and they're over there waiting by the elevators so she could hear me. And she was with two grown dudes. I guess one was her dad and one was maybe a venue rep or something, or maybe a manager. I don't know who the hell they were. At the end of the day, I'm assuming one was her dad because I feel like at the time he was with her doing all her shit. I don't know. But yeah, I went and got on the elevator, and that's when she like fucking towers over me. She's like, all like, oh, you lose something? I'm like, what happened? And she started like, inquiring about my circumstance. And I was like, well, someone pushed me down. No, but So I just tell her, yeah, like I'm missing this camera and, it's kind of a bummer and blah, blah, blah. And so she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Well, maybe I hope you find it, blah, blah, blah. But she was genuinely like making small talk. And like I said, I don't know if she was making small talk because, when a stranger sets foot with you in close proximity, maybe she's trying to do an age old trick, which is you dismantle any potential. And so she kind of took charge of the conversation right off the bat. It's not like I walked on the elevator and was like, oh, hey, Taylor, I actually would like to see your panties.
I don't think it was a case of
That wouldn't
making
have worked
small
out, right?
talk. I don't think it was a case of making small talk, Joe. I think the reality was that
That was just a weird thing. Like, she's seen it all. She's seen all these fucking crazy people who have climbed their fence. They try to break into their houses and shit. Right. So I'm not going to get on the elevator with Taylor Swift and like start chatting with her unless she says something. And
I
she
think
did.
the reality, I think that the reality was,
I've been around celebs.
I know you've been around celebs, but
I'm not
here's
going
the
to make.
thing. Here's the thing. I think that you and Taylor Swift had a moment. I think when you're talking about
We did have a.
energy and you're talking about all of these things, you're talking about symbiosis and all these crazy metaphysical terms that you're using. I think that you and Taylor Swift actually had a moment. And the thing is that you missed out on the moment because I remember you for a fact telling me that you wished that in that moment that you had with Taylor Swift, the mega celebrity, that you had asked for her phone number because you thought that she was interested in you.
Here's the deal. People like me. No. To Taylor Swift, people like me are like the experiences are like squares of toilet paper. I am the toilet paper. People like Taylor, there's constantly many people who fawn over them. That night, I truly believe we had a connection. It was very bizarre, very kind of weird. I don't fully know what it was. It could have just been all in my own head. I've thought about this over and over again where I'm like, was that just all in my own head? Did that just literally happen? It I don't know. I mean, if she ever comes across this, maybe we're destined to be with each other. And one day we'll just fall in love and we'll write songs and no, I'm kidding.
But think about it, Joe. Think about it. You didn't fawn over her. All that you really did was you were that poor guy who was stressing out over his camera that he had lost. You were like this helpless dude that just wanted to find this thing that he had lost. She had this savior complex where she wanted to come along and be your salvation and find the camera for you so that you would have that footage to be able to sell to TMZ and be able to forward on to all of these different media outlets to be able to expose the different people that you were working with at the time.
And I should have known because when we were on the elevator, when she was talking to me, she was like messing with her collar and just like kind of annoyingly looking at me like I was a peasant.
Oh, that's a total no. That's a total sign. The fact she was messing with her collar, like that's gotta be a case of the fact that she wanted you to ask for her phone number and you just missed the opportunity. You just didn't take that opportunity to say to her, look, Taylor, I believe that this is our two energies are connecting right now, and the two of us actually need to be together.
I could buy 20,000 of these stupid ass cameras that he's crying over. What a little bitch. She knew I was in the moment.
But it wouldn't have that particular footage that you could sell to TMZ. That's the thing.
That's true. That's true. I still have that camera somewhere. I got to find the footage.
Did Taylor Swift find it for you?
They ended up finding it.
But Taylor didn't find it.
No. Unfortunately. Well, maybe she did. Maybe she was like, when she went into Allison's room, maybe she really didn't go through the room. It was one of her decoy doubles. And the double went into the room while I was distracted. And then she actually went on mission searching room by room. And because it's Taylor Swift, everyone emptied their pockets immediately. And potentially that's what happened. I could entertain that theory.
How many doubles do you think that Taylor Swift actually has?
Only one, because Taylor can only beat one of them at a time.
Otherwise, she'll just spontaneously combust.
I still feel like she has a little bit of a heart. She can't beat multiple people at one time. She can only abuse one stunt double. I'm totally joking. No, in all seriousness, I don't know. Sorry, I'm like so Jamesoned. But
me too, even though I haven't been drinking any Jameson, I'm Jameson too.
If Taylor ever comes across this, I want to send out an apology to her right off the bat because I'm such an asshole. But like she genuinely was so beautiful and so sweet and stunning, just a stunning human being, and made a major impression on me as you know. And I still
you're just trying to pull it back. You're just trying to pull it back because you think that your two energies crossed for a reason. You think that you're still destined to be together. You're just trying to pull this back so that if Taylor Swift ever stumbles across this podcast, which I have no fucking idea why Taylor Swift would ever stumble across this podcast, but if she does, you're hoping that she's going to forgive you for the things that you've said, and that she's going to realize.
Telling me that I hit too big of an iceberg, like the Titanic, like too many chambers have been full, and I'm gonna sink? There's no way I can stop this sinking ship.
I think that if I'm honest with myself, I think that you and Taylor Swift are destined to be together.
Well, we'll see. I mean, life is not over for me. I'm
hoping for it, because if that means that I can get a co-write with Taylor Swift at some point in my life, then I'm all for it. That's a very selfish thing to say, but I'm going to be honest in saying that. I've had maybe 8 shots of this O'Connor's Irish Cream right now, and I'm happy to admit that.
You got to have the horse before the cart. So I'll do my part. I'll try.
I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means after 8 shots of O'Connor's Irish Cream on St. Paddy's Day. I have no idea what that means, Joe. But if it means that you're going to be with Taylor Swift in the long run, and I'm going to get a co-write with her, then I'm all for it.
No, when someone says, hey, don't put the cart before the horse, it basically means, think about it. If this is the old days, and you're like an elite and you got to get to another castle, you're going by horseback. You can't get anywhere if your cart is before the horse. You got to have the horse in front to pull the cart.
Joe, I can't think about it right now. I've had at least 8 or 10 shots of O'Connor's Irish Cream. This cost me like $4 for the whole bottle, and I'm probably through most of the bottle already. So there's no way that I have any cognitive ability left in this podcast.
I broke my rule. But hey, I did hear this one thing. I will say this. This was I can't remember what his name is, but he's a doctor, and he's like talking about, when you come up against people who have a different point of view in reality, and if they just start getting mad at you and yelling at you, whether you believe in this or that or whatever the hell it may be, he said, just do this. If they start going crazy and they're fucking like, screaming at you, all you got to do is pop your bottom jaw out, go like this, then smile.
That's creepy, Joe. That's creepy. I'm gonna be honest. That's unnerving.
And then you gotta furrow your eyebrow.
I don't know who this doctor was that you were listening to, but that's creepy. He gave you some creepy advice. You can't take that advice.
But just imagine. Just get this. And then you go.
No, that's creepy, Joe. That's creepy. No, don't take that advice. That's not cool. No one's gonna accept that. No one in normal society is gonna accept that. That's not cool.
It will literally end anybody's tirade. If someone's going crazy on you, if you do that shit, if you go, that's gonna stop someone in their tracks.
The next time you start onto one of your tirades about COVID-19 and all of that stuff, I'm gonna do exactly that, and hopefully that's gonna put you off completely.
It might.
Of course, I'm kidding. I say that in a very loving way. I'm only joking with you. I joke with you because we're friends.
Oh, dude, I love it. I love talking shit. Honestly, I'm all about like open conversation. And honestly, I know, when it comes to like, because I know you're really genuinely curious about my journey and like other songwriters and how people kind of get to where they go. And, unfortunately, I wish I was sitting in a house in Malibu. That'd be awesome. Because then I could be like, yeah, I wrote this song. It was the #1 hit in this song. I mean, a lot of my journey has been hustling and really trying to make it work in, getting cuts. And it's not easy. And it's been a very long process for me. But I'm, I have a lot of irons in the fire with a bunch of different things, podcasts and things like that. I'm working on a podcast pilot that's basically a true crime story that just got picked up for a pilot. So we're getting funded for a pilot, and then it's going to be pitched to all these major networks. So I'm also kind of constantly trying to I'm always doing stuff that if I get burnt out in the music world, at least I can be doing something else that kind of challenges me, which is I think why you're doing Down the Rabbit Hole. It's like it allows you to kind of have conversations and do something else creatively that's a little bit outside of music. It still involves being creative and piecing together a project, which I think as an artist, which you are, just like I am, it's like we just want to make stuff and hopefully it's things that can benefit other people, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm on my journey down the yellow brick road, man. I don't know how far it goes, and I just want to like fucking share my whatever I can for anybody, and I'm constantly consuming what other people have done because I'm constantly learning too. You know, we're all here to fucking hopefully make a better world. You know, I do believe in that. I don't want to give up on this planet and just go to Mars, even though I owe you $2 million for this project.
You do owe me $2 million. You still got to transfer me that $2 million into my bank account so that we can join Elon Musk in colonizing Mars. You got to transfer me that $2 million so we can finally start to be able to build that rocket so that we can get to Mars.
Okay, so tell me this. Maybe you and I should start our own podcast where we have...
I feel like we should. I feel like this has been so much fun that we should absolutely start our own podcast.
Too easy. And I love that we have different perspectives. And I honestly think I love this conversation, man. I love, I don't know. I just love being able to share these ideas and talk about music and all this crazy shit. To me, it's like, I've been through it. So it's always weird from this position of being like, oh, this is what I did, or this is my memory of something. But, you know, I mean, we're all in this thing. Everybody, I don't care if you're fucking 10 years old or 50 years old, we're all chasing our own experiences, and every fucking moment we're in, like right now, you and I are in this moment dealing with our realities, like mine in LA, yours in Belfast. And well, what's the actual town again?
Well, where I live is about an hour outside of Belfast. It's just outside of a little city called Armagh, which is actually, I can't remember the exact history of it, or I'm way too drunk to be able to remember any of that detail, but I have a feeling that it's possibly the last like resting place of St. Patrick, possibly. I could be wrong in saying that. I might have to edit this out. I might have to edit this out completely because I'm horribly drunk and I don't want to make a fool of myself on my own YouTube channel. But I feel like it's the last resting place of St. Patrick.
Yeah, he was like kicking back for a couple of days, smoking some weed with his friends.
Absolutely. As you would. Like, why would you not? Whenever you've done all that work spreading the good news of Christ and all of that stuff, why would you not kick back and enjoy a few pints in Armagh and smoke a little bit of weed and do all of that stuff? Why would you not do it? Of course you would do it. It only makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty cool though. I mean, you know, that's what it's all about. I feel like, you know, for me, I don't know where my journey is going. I don't know where I'm trying to get. I just know that the world around me is constantly changing. I do care about my human rights. I do care about my right of being able to make choices for myself, for my own health. And I also, you know, feel like the protection of songwriters is important and things like that, in kind of supporting causes that are, you know, standing up for songwriters and people that should be getting paid money that are not getting paid money. And, you know, more fairness, I think, in the industry is needed. And I'm still learning too about all of this stuff. I already know we live in an unjust world. How to fix it is anyone's question. And I'm definitely not the person out there to say I know how to do it. I'm willing to talk shit about the people who aren't doing it, you know, and that's a lot easier. And hopefully I can find people, you know, on this journey of talking shit of you know, the inferiority of certain ways of doing things. I hope to find the groups of people who are talking about the resolutions and like the better way forward, you know, because I want to connect to that. I want to be a part of the next wave of what's happening in the music industry, and also want to remain free and make whatever I want and not be beholden to trends and shit. because I don't think that's healthy either. If that makes sense.
Tell me this. You recently confided in me in a conversation that we had previous to this podcast that despite the success that you've managed to enjoy within the music industry, that you often struggle to actually just be able to pay your bills.
Yeah, I've definitely had many times since I stopped touring. I mean, because the second I quit the road, I committed to having to figure out how to make money unconventionally. I don't live off credit. I spend what I earn. And so I knew I didn't have the best credit. I knew I wasn't wanting to play the game to such a degree that I was all of a sudden going to be enslaved to paying off car notes and paying off fucking a house loan. I didn't want to get into that cog while I'm still trying to build my career as a writer. And I'm still trying to understand what the world is. So I didn't want to like lock myself down financially, which I think I avoided a lot of kind of getting into what a lot of people get into is when you're younger, you get married young and then you all of a sudden want a house and then you want to have a car and then you get in, you have a job, you have a stable job. So all these stable things, there is a trade-off. And that's the only normalcy that I perceive is like, oh, okay, so I'm not doing what that is when most people go get a job, they can live this life where they're in this system, but they're also beholden to so many responsibilities that I just didn't want to have. And so I've constantly, my whole life, I've been living kind of in the fringe of surviving, and like when I was in Nashville, I had money and there were times where I had like 30 grand in the bank and I would end up going and blowing all that to make a record. And there were months where I would make 6 grand. There were months where I'd make fucking $20. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? Because I kind of got beholden to mailbox money, making money through licensing and just trying to believe in myself, but not like something not happening in the actual real world that puts real money in my real pocket. And so, I've had to work jobs. I worked with, for Amazon for 6 months back in 2019, before the pandemic. I worked for almost about 6 months as an Amazon driver and doing deliveries. And that was a tough pill for me because my pride was like, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be successful in your music and have all your bills covered and blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, I do feel like I carry certain, I allow my personal moral compass and unashamed sense of self to kind of get in the way of potential opportunities for myself, where I feel like I've kind of compromised myself to a degree in certain avenues. But I also believe very much in one's own road and journey, and that there's nobody that can control anyone's outcome for their life. And so I kind of go, well, maybe I'm saving myself a lot of heartache down the road or becoming too, because when I was younger, I mean, fuck, man, if my bandmates and all of us would have gotten famous or some shit would have happened, we become multimillionaires at that time, I do think I would have become the biggest piece of shit. And I've been humbled by having to, deal with money the way I have and deal with facing inner demons because of that, because I can't just go and buy my way out of something. I have to face my own survivability. I don't want to be on the streets in the tent, but I also don't want to fucking, be beholden in some suburban neighborhood somewhere in some fucking cookie cutter house. Fuck that shit. If I'm going high, I want my ass to be in Malibu in a fucking house that overlooks the ocean. Like other people are, why would I not? Like if I'm going to gamble, why would I not gamble? But I want to keep my soul intact. And how do I do that? And that's the tango I've been on. And it's very difficult to do. And I'm learning. And I think I'm going to get there. I created this project with some friends that I do believe is going to generate millions of dollars. I really do believe that. And fortunately for me in this process, it doesn't matter what my personality is like. This project is outside of me as a person. And so where music, it's very much connected to the person, you know? So like I could do an interview, you know, on Nickelodeon right now, and I wouldn't be talking about any of the shit. I would have to talk about strictly my music stuff and probably be, you know, very toned down to a degree. But you know, for this kind of a thing, it's like maybe the music industry did fuck me up mentally, and I am a little crazy to some people, you know, according to their perspective or their standard of what is somebody who's thinking a little bit too much out of the box, or well, I don't know. I don't have a gauge of that, because there are people like Pee Wee Herman that exist on the planet, or people like Elon Musk, for instance. Yeah, that guy. If I'm crazy, well, then what the fuck is that guy? You know, it's like that guy's out of control. Like he sounds like you're talking to a robot. Maybe I do too, but I know I'm rambling, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like I've definitely been on this constant journey of trying to know oneself. And it's ironic, it all started in the Christian music industry. And that journey has led me to becoming free of the dogma, to then becoming so free that I'm seeing how decrepit the world can be. And it's causing me to rediscover a little more of this moralistic, conservative side of myself, even though I still believe, you know, to each his own, people can do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anybody. I'm finding in myself that I do carry more values that I really thought were there. I'm just now seeing things because I've gone down those rabbit holes that I don't want anything to do with, where someone at the elite A+ level would be willing to do. And that's the unfortunate thing for someone like myself. There's certain things I'm not willing to do. And so I'm going to have to figure out another way to do it at that same level. And I don't know what the fuck that is, but I'm figuring it out. And I feel like that's makes it fun. It keeps it fun for me on a personal level of as a songwriter.
We haven't even really touched upon the fact that most recently you produced a song and you co-wrote a song for an artist who is a friend of both of ours now by the name of Dalton Day. You produced a song for him called Don't Stop Moving.
Yes.
And that song, you were fortunate enough, got picked up through a company called Music Bed that you have worked quite closely with over the past few years. It got picked up through that company and it got used in a national US commercial by Nature Valley. And I know that for you, that was a pretty big feat to be able to accomplish that kind of thing, where for anyone who doesn't understand the sync industry, for anyone who doesn't understand how music sync and TV and film and all of those things work, much of the industry has kind of gotten skewed towards the sync industry because that's really where the money lies for a lot of musicians nowadays. And
Well,
being able,
everything you watch, there's songs behind it, and someone wrote that song and got paid.
yes,
No matter what it is you're watching, there's some song behind something, because everybody uses it in commercials.
so you watch a commercial, or a TV show or a film or any of those things, so much of that is so reliant upon music to be able to tell the story of whatever it is, whatever narrative it is that they're trying to portray. So much of that is actually told through music rather than the dialogue or the acting or any of that stuff. The music is so integral to the story that those things tell. They are so reliant upon the music that underlies all of those things, whether it's TV or film or commercial or any of those things. They are so reliant upon the music that they choose in order to set the mood to sell whatever it is that they're trying to sell to you. Joe was lucky enough. Joe was lucky enough to have a song picked up for a US national TV commercial for a huge company, probably a conglomerate, quite honestly, known as Nature Valley, a multinational company, whatever way you want to describe it. It was picked up by Nature Valley, who's a huge company all around the world, in the US, wherever it is that you want to talk about Nature Valley. They are huge. They're an unbelievable force in the global economy. And Joe was lucky enough to have a song picked up of his that he produced, that he co-wrote, that was recorded by an artist called Dalton Day, who he produced this song for. A song called Don't Stop Moving. It was put into a Nature Valley commercial that went out all over the US. It maybe went across the world for all I know. But it got picked up and it was put into this commercial. And as far as I am aware, it was a pretty substantial payout for you and the co-writers on that track. The interesting thing for me is that you talk about the struggle to be able to pay your bills. When people realize how much money is actually involved when it comes to a company like Nature Valley, actually using a song that you have produced and a song that you have co-written, the money that is involved in a transaction like that, for them to be able to put your song onto their brand, is a huge amount of money. And the interesting thing for me is that you, as an artist, you live in Los Angeles, which is a city of dreamers, the city of stars. It is an incredible city in a whole lot of ways, but it's also an incredibly expensive city to live in a whole lot of ways.
It's the land of broken dreams. It's also known as.
Absolutely, the Boulevard of Broken Dreams, as Green Day once described it. But the interesting thing for me is that despite the fact that you got such a huge payout, and I don't know whether you feel comfortable talking about how much you got paid out from that Nature Valley commercial that you managed to land, but I know from conversations that the two of us have had that it was a substantial amount of money in regards to how much money any average person would earn in a year. It's a substantial amount of money. And yet the reality is that despite that, you're still talking about struggling to pay your bills. The reality is that despite all of that, you're still having to write so many more songs that are never getting picked up by commercials, never getting opportunities, never getting to be heard. And you're having to wait upon that one opportunity to land in order to be able to pay your bills and to be able to sustain you.
Well, it's a gamble. Like I know the game I'm playing. Like for me, it's just I'm going for broke. I don't have any other backup plan. I don't have any other career I want to do. Like, yes, I'm fucking around with podcasts and I'm like, I have a media company and we're developing shows. That's basically like that's my backup plan was like, well, I like doing all these other things. I'm developing like 5 different movies right now that are I have to write them and it's a lot of work, but I already have this is stuff that I want to do. It's just I don't know. I'm kind of in this place where I just want to make stuff. Music was the avenue I took. I happened to just get very lucky and play music and get hired to play keys. There were definitely better keyboardists out there than me. I just happened to work my way and have this secured gigs and I knew how to sing and play at the same time, which is a big plus too. If you're out there and you're wondering if you should, if you want to be a keyboardist or a side player, sing too. Learn how to sing because that shit is going to get you hired. And but yeah, like I ended up out here going, well, I don't have any backup plans other than going, I believe in myself. I believe in my ideas. I believe that, you know, my music is good enough to compete with other people out there. And I believe that there's enough out there where I can also enjoy a life in music as well. Cause I just want to do what I love. And, so to a degree, it's like, no, it's not, it's never been about the money because literally I've made no money for months and months and months and months where I had literally had to borrow money. And if you've ever had to borrow money, it is the shittiest fucking feeling on the planet. And we live in a world where people value themselves depending on how many cars they have and how big their house is and all this shit. And I'm sitting here going, you know what? I'm trying to launch fucking companies that I can't even afford to grow on my own. So it's been a team building process. For me, it's been like trial and error. I've gone through, where, yes, there was one big payout of this one commercial sync. Well, how about the 2.5 years where nothing was happening and I was making less than fucking $200 a month for, multiple months in a row, being on unemployment. You know, I'm doing background work on TV shows and shit to just try to make money wherever I can. And so my whole thing is I've never been about folding it and quitting. I've always been about just trying to figure out how I can keep making records, how I can keep, you know, making things that can potentially be bigger than myself. The Olivia Maybell story that we're developing is one of those projects that I really do believe it's gone on to be viewed by millions of people. If you search on Google Olivia Maybell, you're going to see everything about that story. Me and my friends created all of it, and we're developing things off of that. And it's like, so it's kind of mind blowing. It's where it's like I just happened to just meet people along this journey, and we all were like sitting around, and we all had this, oh, we could do this idea. How about we put our powers together and make this thing? And you just don't know where it's going to go. And now we just got picked up for this pilot. We won grand prize for this major script contest, and they're now funding our pilot, and then they're also pitching it for major network pickup and distribution. So it's like this shit's coming together in weird ways where I'm like, I'm not predicting any of this. I've been broke. I'm still broke. I'm on unemployment right now. I'm not going to lie. I hate it. I want to make my own money so I can be off unemployment. I've started a publishing company and a media company and a podcast network to figure out a way out of my own poverty. Because when you stop sucking the tit of the machine, you really have to figure out a way to play the game. And if you're not sucking the tit of Satan, then you got to work a lot harder. And I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying not to suck the devil's dick. But I also, you know, I want to master, you know, creating my own experience that is of some integrity, you know, and not just following other people's routes. And that's my big thing is like, I don't want to die and just be someone who was just fucking a true sellout, like somebody who didn't challenge other people around me, that didn't fucking question the system and the gatekeepers. And I just don't think it's right, some of the things that are going on the planet. And even though I'm not, you know, Mr. Have all the answers, I know something's wrong, and I think we should all be talking about it. And I just want to encourage that. I'm one of those other artists out there that is willing to do it. And so I want to connect with other people like that. And you're one of those people. So solutions, that's for another day, you know, and that could be up to anybody, you know. I just want to kick the conversation. It's like a snowball effect. And I don't ever want to be an artist that doesn't speak out if I feel uncomfortable about something, you know. It's not because you were within 6 feet. It's because you were not willing to even fucking talk some shit about your government. Like, why would you not? Like, what world do we live in where the government was the good guy ever in any movie? Come on, guys, let's get with the program here. What reality did we think we stumbled into, right? As artists, as songwriters, as business people, as hippies without anything, you know. If the grid goes down, you and I, it's all down to our survivability. How long can you live in a tent building fires, hunting your own food, you know? And that's a very real question. I think is we're just in a situation right now where we're watching how very fragile our reality really, really is. Especially like, I don't know, just seeing people's grids get fucked with, like in Texas, like that was bad what happened over there. And it's like, it just shows you how fragile our world is. And I love talking about it because it's, I don't want to be caught off guard, I guess. If that makes sense.
I guess you're talking about, in some ways, you're talking about pursuing a dream here that in some ways can kind of feel like a nightmare. And so I'm just kind of curious as to why, if you go through such struggle to pursue this dream that you have, I can relate to this as an artist, but I'm interested to be able to share with the people who might actually take the time to view this as to why you feel it's important to continue pursuing this thing that sometimes can feel like it's a little bit directionless or maybe even a little bit of a nightmare. What is it that actually keeps you going? Like in all of this struggle, in the times when you struggle to pay your bills, or you're having to sign up to unemployment in order to sustain yourself or any of that stuff, despite all of the success that you've managed to have in your career, and you have had an incredible amount of success, you shouldn't demean in any way, shape, or form the success and all of the things that you've managed to achieve throughout the course of your career, because to me, you're an incredible inspiration as a person, as a human being. The fact that you've managed to make these connections with these unbelievably talented and successful people in the industry, to me, that is incredibly inspiring. And yet, the fact that you are struggling at times to be able to even just pay your bills
I'm
makes
just
me really curious as to why you even fucking bother to keep pursuing this dream that you have.
we're all visitors, man. I feel like I am in search of my self potential. I'm in search of healing all of my deepest, darkest wounds. I'm in search of um, community. I'm in search of discovering things that I never knew I could experience within my own craft as an artist and as a songwriter. And because I've had the taste of, you know, creating records and creating songs that have really meant something to me personally, it's become an addiction. So it's like that's the only game plan I have is I'm trying to understand who I am as a person and also become more empathetic and uh, c- compassionate for others, because I feel like for so much of my life I've felt very selfish and I felt very uh, only out of security, because I have a hard time trusting people and all this shit from, you know, childhood traumas and stuff. And it's like I don't hide any of that stuff. My whole thing is just I'm on this journey of trying to fucking slay those dragons, and I don't want to fall prey to some of the evils I've seen on this planet. And I know I could be susceptible. And I just so it makes me passionate about speaking out to hold myself not only accountable, but hopefully other people that are still fucking have a beating heart, you know? I don't know. I don't have a game plan. My game plan is just living until I'm either ousted from society because I'm thinking too weirdly, or my music is embraced and I get to go and do other experiential things that allow me to go tour and do things that I didn't even know were possible, you know? Because right now it's like I'm just hanging out. I wish I could say, oh, I could just literally book a tour and go out and tour and do things and I have a big enough audience. I don't. It's like I've got fans everywhere, but it's not a lot. It's not enough to like sustain me going and touring and like doing all these things that require, you know, that kind of a lifestyle. But that's a goal for me. You know, I would love to be able to go tour over in Ireland and fucking crush it over there because people like my music genuinely, you know? Um, or the fact that I was willing to go over there and talk shit about the Irish government and the American government and anyone's government and support people that are just wanting to fucking do good things in the world and make music and support songwriters that are everywhere I go tour and bring on opening acts that were, you know what I mean? Like I've seen it happen for other people and I want to be that same kind of um I want to experience it not only with myself but also be able to pass that baton to other people, because it's been passed to me where I got to play keys for somebody and see what happens and see how it works. And all it is songs. It's just creating songs, and everything else is machine. Everything else is people and activity and decisions and .coms and ticket sales and dick sucking and dinners and coffee.
You talk a
Take.
lot about you talk a lot about the idea of trauma within your own past. I know that that is definitely something that is factored into my own life and my own writing and the way that I conduct my life moving forward. I've identified that in my own life, and I've identified the traumas within my own life that have kind of held me back in many ways. In experiencing life and being able to evolve throughout the course of my life, do you think that that's something for you personally that impacts upon the reason why you continue to do what you do, why you continue to be a songwriter, and why you continue to express yourself in the ways that you do?
Yeah, I want to prove to myself a lot. There's a lot of things I'm still looking to prove for myself in my actual reality. It's like it's one thing to dream, it's another thing to experience it and live in it in your skin. And I think that's the hardest part I've experienced out here in California, because it can be so shallow at times in the industry, and just kind of existing out here is very, can be depressing. I mean, to be honest, because everyone's hustling, trying to make it, and people are willing to fucking step on each other to get ahead, period. And for me, it's just, I've had to face a lot of my own inner demons, my ego, my, when I was 10 years old, I remember sitting at my desk in San Antonio, and I would literally be like, because I would save little magazine clippings of like Jonathan Taylor Thomas or Leonardo DiCaprio or Kirsten Dunst or one of these artists that were around my age that were doing the craft of acting, and they were living the dream I wanted, where I was like, I want to do that too. I know I could literally go and like figure out how to like be a part of something like that. That sounds amazing, because you see the impact it has on everyone around you, people talking about it. And for some reason, I was always attracted to the idea of being a part of the producer side of it, producing and being a part of that. And man, so I remember at 10 years old, I wanted to live in LA. And it wasn't until in my fucking early 30s that I moved out here. It just took this road where I was just constantly observing and learning and stumbling from one doorway to the other and getting an opportunity and taking it. And dude, the day, like literally, to like the thought of playing right now in front of 60,000 people is fucking terrifying to me. And I had to it just took so many bites and experiences that led me into being able to go and do that and be a part of that moment where I wasn't terrified, where I was just like, this is what I do. I play, and it's all motor memory, like shit, where it's just automatic. I didn't have to overthink anything. I already knew what I was doing 100%. As long as my monitor mix was working, I could be as high as I wanted on stage, and I knew what I was doing. And thinking about that now, because I've been away from the stage like that to that degree for so many years, it's terrifying. I mean, it's terrifying to think about, but I know, ultimately life is all about, I think, pushing ourselves. It's taking risks. It's, it's forcing ourselves to do uncomfortable things so we can grow and learn. And, the only way to calibrate your system is by pushing it and, knowing when it's too much and knowing where you got to fucking dial it back. And I've got a lot of shit to learn personally. I know that, but I think just the fact that I don't know where this thing's going to end up for me, I can't sit here and go, oh, this is what I want to do, and this is how it's going to be, and blah, blah. There's some people that are like that, and they just fucking will suck the dicks to get there. I can't. I kind of am like, I want to dance on the rivers. I want to float on the leaves that happen. I want to jump from lily pad. I want to literally, my experience to not be something where I compromise myself to get there. So it's been a lot longer, but at the same time, it's been fucking awesome. And I'm learning to be in my own skin right now in the moment versus thinking ahead or thinking about the past or whatever it is. It's like, I just want to live right now, have fun right now, not be concerned about making any mistakes, because I should be smart enough right now knowing if I'm making a mistake, at least to a certain degree. So if that makes any sense. But it drives me. That shit drives me forward, and it keeps me going, cool. I did all the Brandon shit. Yeah, I played with all these people. Yeah, I've been poor for fucking, technically years, but I'm also living in a really cool house and I'm getting by. It's expensive as fuck. The house we pay it's three of us living in this house. It's $3,000 a month. For the first year, I was paying half of it. So I was paying $1,500 a month just on rent, not including my
that just blows my mind. Like the idea that you're paying $3,000 a month for the house that you're living in, that blows my mind.
I'm telling you, this is without car payments and shit. So this is why I'm like, I'm banking on myself here. And maybe one day you and I can do this chat and I'll be on my phone somewhere with a burner phone, living on the goddamn streets. I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the outcome because I think I'm too damn determined and I'm too stubborn to live on the streets. And I also have enough, I think I have friends and family that wouldn't allow that, hopefully.
I wouldn't allow that.
Maybe I'm too prideful to like ask for help and I would just end up on the streets without saying shit. I don't know. I'm just saying I want to succeed in my art and I want to build platforms for others and I want to succeed financially in whatever form that is. I don't have to have a Ferrari. I don't have to have a mansion. I would love to not worry about my bills anymore. That would be great. I worry about my bills every month and I'm still loving pursuing what I'm doing. So if I could keep doing that and not have to worry about my bills anymore, I think it would be all that sweeter. And so I'm trying to manifest those energies and keep my eye on the fucking ball because we live in a very volatile, changing world. And I'll be damned if I all of a sudden am stuck at a desk somewhere. Not going to fucking happen. So I'm
Joe,
willing to risk it all. I'm all in, bitch. Not you as a bitch, the world.
Joe, I have really enjoyed this chat, and I think it's the perfect place for us to be able to wrap this whole thing up. I think that you are such an inspiring person. I've always thought that. From the time when we met back in 2016 or 2017, whenever it was that we met out at your house in LA, you were kind enough to be able to host
Oh, dude, you're welcome.
me. I know that. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful to know someone like you who is so willing to be able to support other people, to be able to sustain other people in the pursuit of their dreams, regardless of how hard things can be sometimes for yourself. You're very selfless in that way. And I think the world needs more people like you, quite honestly, to be able to help other people along, regardless of how wealthy we are at times. We're just willing to be able to sustain each other and help each other along in our journeys. You showed me incredible kindness the first time that we ever met. I remember the first time when we ever met, I was on tour at the time in 2016 or 2017, whenever it was. And I was touring around the US for maybe 3 weeks, I think, at the time. You were kind enough to host us whenever we went over to LA. I was there with Casey Reed, who is a mutual friend of ours out of Dallas, Texas. And I didn't even know you at the time. And you were kind enough to be willing to host me, to let me sleep on your floor in your apartment in LA at the time. And you have no idea how much that means to me as a person. Like, you obviously don't understand my personal struggle. We've talked a lot about your struggle throughout the course of this interview. In my personal struggle, I mean, I've slept on floors, I've slept in cars whenever I've been touring in different places. And it's not to say that it's been a struggle a lot of the time. I have chosen that struggle, and I don't begrudge any of that in any way, shape, or form. I think that that's been very character building. But I have been so incredibly grateful for the opportunities that I've had to meet people like you who have been willing to host me, have been willing to even give me a floor or a sofa or whatever it is, just a roof over my head for a night in whatever place that it has been that I've been visiting. I've been so fortunate to meet people like you along the way who have been so kind to host me and to help me along my journey.
You're a fucking badass, dude. Like I feel the same way about you. Like you hosted me when I was in with me and Dalton and Dylan when we were out visiting you. It's likewise, man. Like it's special when you meet people. Like I am so grateful that I like you fucking bumped in. You came to Nashville. I was just living my life out there, and I knew Casey through a mutual friend that I started my media company with. It's just this weird connection of people, man, that we were all cosmically meant to meet each other. I don't know what it is. And maybe in 1,000 lifetimes, we'd still be meeting each other up in different bodies and different forms and different careers. And I don't know, but I'm with you, man. I for one, it like means a lot for you to say that shit because I feel like a piece of shit sometimes because I I'm just always in my own head about everything that I think like I'm doing. Like, was I too mean to that lady? Did I like, should I have said that? Like, did I say, like after I order something, fucking, I question if I said something with too much attitude and I didn't even mean to, it's like, it's overthinking everything. And so you kind of get in this perpetual self-loathing of like, oh, I'm such an asshole. And so to hear that, man, it just does mean a lot. And man, likewise, I'm honored that I get to be a part of your podcast and just hang out with you for fucking, I know it's late as hell over there. And even though it still looks like it's daytime on your end.
Because I've got all these fancy lights over here. I got these lamps in the corner. Check out these lights. I don't even know if I can pull it over close enough. You see this bad boy?
That's amazing.
This bad boy?
You're gonna love it.
This flashy lamp that my grandmother bought years ago.
Like Sunday morning light coming in.
Yeah.
You need a coffee in your hand.
Dude, I am so grateful for you taking the time to sit down and chat with me. Honestly, you're such an inspiration to me. You have been such an encouragement to me over the years. I really appreciate the time that you've given me over the years, given all of your experience, given all of your talent. I hope that anyone who has stuck with us this far in the podcast will go and check your music out. We haven't even scratched the surface of the things that I wanted to talk with you about, quite honestly. We've gone off on so many tangents throughout the course of this podcast.
We'll do a part 2.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2. We'll definitely have you back on again, but I hope that you guys will go and check out Joe's music. Joe has released music under so many different artist names, monikers as he would describe them. He's gone under the name Joe Moralez over the years. He's gone under Awake or Sleeping. He's currently going under Songbird. I don't know where he's going next. I don't know what he's releasing music under next. He is an incredibly inspiring person. He has been so kind to me and so encouraging to me over the years. I'm so grateful to him for the kindness and encouragement that he showed me over the years. The fact that he has just experienced such incredible success and he's connected with such incredible people within the industry. Over his career, it's just been such an inspiration to me, and I am so grateful for the friendship that I have with him. I'm so grateful for the fact that he's been willing to sit down and take the time to chat with me. I'm so grateful for him to be here. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the podcast as much as I have. I have thoroughly enjoyed being able to sit down with Joe Moralez.
Thanks, everybody.
Being able to learn a little bit more about him, to understand how his mind works and where his head goes.
I know. I'm sorry.
In all of the different tangents that it takes.
I know. Let me just say this. If I offended anybody, I apologize. It's never my intention. My whole thing is I'm a thinker. I think too much, and there's nothing that can stop that. I don't
think that you need to apologize at all, Joe, to be perfectly honest. I think that you've been wonderful. I apologize for the fact that this O'Connor's is taking much more effect than I thought it was probably going to.
It was the OnlyFans section of the show takes place after this, right?
Yes, that's going to be the extra part of the show. Joe, thank you so much for sitting down and taking the time to chat with me. You have no idea how much I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be able to talk with me and to be able to share your experiences, to be able to share all of your thoughts. It's such an inspirational thing to sit and listen to you chat about all of the different thoughts that are running around your head, all of the different tangents that your mind goes off in. It's such an awesome thing.
If you want to go deep next time on part 2.
Yes, I'm absolutely going to have you on for part 2 of me and all my friends.
You like the Swift story.
It has been such a pleasure having you on, Joe. Thank you so much for sharing St. Patrick's Day with me. You've been such a fun guest to have on the podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for checking out the podcast. This podcast was sponsored by Jameson Irish Whiskey and O'Connor's Country Cream or whatever that is that I have.
Oh my God. There's like a family out there like named the O'Connors and they're just jizzing into vats. It's their Country Cream. Bunch of farmers jizzing.
They're gonna be sliding into my DMs after this podcast, I guarantee.
They're like, we want to send you a couple bottles of our warm stuff. We've got some warm, fresh cream.
I hope that they sent me some of that warm, fresh cream. I hope that they do.
Yeah, if you can get sponsored by O'Connor's and Jameson, dude, which I believe you're on your way, and this is going to happen. It's happening. We're doing this.
I think we're on to a winner, Joe. I think we need to have a podcast together. I think you were right. Like an hour and a half ago, whenever we discussed this an hour and a half ago about the two of us having a podcast together, I think the two of us need to do it.
It'd be too easy.
Joe, thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys. If you have stuck with us this far into Me and All My Friends, thank you guys so much for tuning in to Me and All My Friends. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Joe and all of the random thoughts that swirl around his head. That's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to be able to give people a free platform to be able to express their thoughts and all of that stuff. Please go and check out elftreepublishing.com. That's where you'll find all of Joe's music. We didn't even scratch the surface of all of the stuff that Joe has covered over the years. He's released like 2 EPs and 10 albums and like 15,000 singles and God knows how much. Go to elftreepublishing.com and you'll be able to check out all of that stuff. Check him out at Songbird on Spotify or whatever streaming platform it is that you use. Check him out at Awake or Sleeping, Joe Moralez, a whole bunch of other things. You'll be able to find it all on elftreepublishing.com. Please check him out. He's such an incredibly talented songwriter. He's such an awesome dude, and I'm so grateful for him taking the time to be able to chat with me this evening. Thank you for tuning in to Me and All My Friends, and we'll see you for another episode. See you soon.
Cheers, guys.